Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Bernard. Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel. Madame le député Le Hegarat.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Elves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Ghost. Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Joseph. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Porée. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac. Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et la puissance de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple qu'il te plut de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions, mon nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné à t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Défaut.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Sir, the Constable of St. Brelade's is away on an APF journey, so if he could be marked excusé on state's business.
Way on state's business.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Sir, the Constable of Trinity is at a medical appointment which he had first thing this morning, and he will be here as quickly as he can, and he asked to be marked excusé.
I was content to mark the connétable as excusé.
Thank you, sir.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Sir, the Conotable of St Martin is accompanying a close family member at a medical appointment, and she'll be joining us as soon as she can. I'd ask you to be marked excusez.
Members content to mark the conotable excusez? Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Southern,
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Tadier,
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Morale,
Defoe.
Madame le Deputy Gardner,
Sir, Deputy Gardner is away on States business currently running a CPA seminar, a post-election seminar.
Thank you. State's business.
Monsieur le Deputy Gorst,
Defoe.
Madame le Deputy Moore,
Defoe.
Monsieur le Deputy Joseph, Madame le Deputy Porée,
So the Deputy Porée is away on the same conference as Constable Jackson. Could she be marked away on State's business, please?
Business.
Monsieur le Deputy Binet.
Malade.
Je rappelle que Monsieur le Deputy Binet est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé.
Alad.
Madame le Deputy Kovac,
Deputy Kovac is also away at the APF conference.
State's business. Les États sont constitués. Deputy Miles.
Could I raise the Defo on Deputy Morel, please, sir?
Members content to raise a defo? Defo is raised on Deputy Morale. Above all, members, I'd like to welcome His Excellency to the Chamber this morning. Members will be aware that as a result of my appointment to the office of Bailiff, a vacancy arose in the office of Deputy Bailiff. A process for appointing into that post was agreed with the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice. That process involved a public advertisement of the vacancy, 2 written exercises, and a formal interview following a series of consultations. The selection panel was co-chaired by the former bailiff, Sir Timothy Lecoq, and Christopher Stevenson, chair of the Appointments Commission. The panel included Miss Claire Montgomery, King's Counsel, the senior judge of the Jersey Court of Appeal, Jurat Kimaverty, and Mr. John Lafondre, former Chief Minister. I'm pleased to announce that the successful applicant was Mark Temple, King's Counsel. The present Attorney General and His Majesty the King has graciously accepted the recommendation that he should be appointed the next Deputy Bailiff of Jersey, and he'll take office in the new year. Now move on to the order paper. There are a number of subordinate enactments under B and matters presented or laid under C. The following matters have been lodged under D. P67, Les Kennevet Parade and Precinct Amendment, lodged on the 14th of October by the Council of Ministers. P74, Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Election Observers, lodged on the 9th of October by the Conotable of St Helier. P75, Health and Safety Appeal Tribunal, reappointment of Chair and Deputy Chair, lodged on the 9th of October by the Minister for Social Security. P76, Income Support Medical Appeal Tribunal, reappointment of Chair, lodged on the 9th of October by the Minister for Social Security. P77, Social Security Medical Appeal Tribunal, reappointment of Chair, lodged on the 9th of October by the same Minister. P78, Social Security Tribunal, reappointment of Chair, lodged on the 9th of October by the same Minister. P79, Draft Social Security Law Overlapping Benefits Jersey Amendment Regulations, lodged on the 10th of October by the same Minister. P80, Draft Social Security Law Long-Term Disability Allowance Jersey Amendment Regulations, lodged on the 13th of October by the same Minister. P81, Draft Police Complaints and Conduct Jersey Amendment Regulations, lodged on the 13th of October by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. P82, Draft Police Complaints and Conduct States of the Police Force Regulations, lodged on the 13th of October by the same Minister. P83, Draft Police Complaints and Conduct Honorary Police Regulations, lodged on the 13th of October by the same Minister. P84, Draft Police Complaints and Conduct Jersey Commandments Act, lodged on the 13th of October by the same Minister. P85, Draft Marriage and Civil Partnership, Dissolution and Separation Jersey Law, lodged on the 14th of October by the same Minister. P86, Draft Trademarks Jersey Law, lodged on the 14th of October by the Minister for External Relations. P87, Draft Sea Fisheries Minimum Size Limits Jersey Amendment Number 2 Regulations, lodged on the 14th of October by the Minister for the Environment. P88, Draft Children Convention Rights Jersey Commencement Number 2 Act, lodged on the 15th of October by the Minister for Children and Families. There is nothing under E. Under F, members are advised that in accordance with Standing Order 1372B, I've received written notice from Deputy Porée indicating her wish to resign from the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. Deputy Catherine Curtis, do you wish to deal with reappointment on another occasion to your panel?
On another occasion, please.
Thank you very much. There are no matters under G or H. The written questions are listed on the order paper to which answers have been provided. And we now come to oral questions on notice. There are 17 questions, which means approximately 8 minutes to be allowed per question. And the first question, Deputy Bailiff will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. Further to her comments to the Health and Social Security panel during the quarterly hearing on 24th September 2025, will the Minister provide details of the advice she has received from the Social Security Fund actuaries regarding the reduction in the grant to the fund?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I can confirm that the letter that I received from the actuaries was published on gov.je yesterday, and a link was sent to all states members. In addition to the letter published yesterday, I will be providing additional information to members in the next few weeks on the long-term impact of the proposed temporary reduction in the grant over the next 4 years.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Speaking to the Health and Social Security panel on the same date, the Minister told the panel that the advice she received from the actuaries was the basis of her confidence that reducing the grant to the Social Security Fund was not going to damage the long-term solvency of the fund. Can she say what part of the letter from the actuaries gave her this confidence?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. When I looked at the tables provided by the actuaries and the impact on the fund over time, I noted that there was very minimal impact in the next few years shown over the next 4 years. I was conscious that what we didn't have within that letter was actuarial advice regarding just the temporary reduction. What the advice relates to is a more permanent reduction. So that's why I have requested that additional letter. But I am confident that the proposed temporary reductions will have a minimal impact on the long-term sustainability of the fund. And I have received officer advice as well to that effect. But I have asked for that further independent advice to give members further assurance ahead of the budget debate.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether, in requesting an update from the actuaries on the funding, any request was given to them about changing or altering the investment return that the fund is due to produce over the time period?
Minister.
So, as usual, with asking for advice from actuaries, we did ask for a number of scenarios. Those scenarios included population differences, as well as differences in possible returns from investments as well.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Was the base case requested by the Minister and her offices to understand the impact of the fund with no change to the actuarial modelling proposals, aka no change to the investment return to that was previously used to forecast the performance of the fund.
Minister.
Yes, we of course always need to compare to base cases. We also asked for an adjustment on the actual figures within the fund at the end of 2024 as well.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. The fund is a contributory one, as the Minister knows, set up on the basis of a third contributions from employees, employers and the states. The wise decisions of the Minister's predecessors puts the funds today in a very robust form. Those, however, is a separate fund for the purposes of contributory benefits and pensions, and I would have thought that the first and proper decision, if surplus funds are available, are to at least consult with the receivers of benefits and the future recipients for what they wish to do with effectively what is their partnership funds of it. And I wondered whether the Minister would explain, in the event of this good position being on the fund, which is to be welcomed, what alternative considerations were given to either improve benefits or relieve contributions at present.
Minister.
So I gave a lot of consideration to intergenerational fairness. As members will see from the charts produced within the actuaries' report, it is indeed the fund is very, very secure for the pensioners of today. When making decisions and when providing challenge to the to Treasury colleagues and in discussions with Council of Ministers, I did consider intergenerational fairness, and the things that we are funding in this budget are very much about that and future receivers of pensions. Things like ensuring that our residential childcare settings are suitable and fit for purpose. Things like ensuring that our emergency services are well funded and well run. And things like ensuring that our teachers have good terms and conditions ongoing. We need to remember as well that additional funding in the budget is provided for childcare. We need to ensure that the Social Security Fund is fit for purpose for the future. The only way that we can do that is ensuring that we have a working population into the future as well.
Supplementary.
The Minister explains a number of very valid matters which are in the past and in the historic situation of the fund are matters which have been dealt with out of general taxation. My question related to the options of the fund recipients themselves. She's talking about the ecosystem, sir, of which the fund operates, but the fund is a contributory fund and has not been interfered with like other funds, which is a matter of a great celebration in Jersey. Is it not correct? She talks about the intergenerational funds in the future, but what about the contributors now? I recall, for example, the mini-budget that was introduced in the first time of this government, approved by this Assembly, that relieved employees of their obligation to place money into the fund. There's a cost of living crisis, and is it not appropriate to at least publish, and would she agree to publish, what options she had in relation to what to do with the surplus fund? For example, was consideration given to relieving the current contributors paying into the fund without any problem of compromising future pensions and their future pensions? Was considerations like that given? That's what I'm asking.
Minister.
So the measure in the current budget is a short-term measure. Yes, we did, of course, consider the current contributors to the fund, which is the working age population of the island. What we know is that one great burden on the cost of living for our working age population is things like paying for childcare, and that's why we've provided very, very targeted measures within this budget. Of course, we do have an election coming up. I stood on a manifesto that had very clear policies in relation to contributions and taxation, and I think that that will be an election matter in the coming year.
I don't wish to, I asked for if the Minister would publish her alternative options.
Yes. Did you respond to that part of the question?
So So we looked at what was available with the contributions that we have and what we would be putting in. We didn't consider any other alternatives in relation to cutting contributions. That would have been inappropriate and would have had a far more longer term reach and impact on the fund.
Deputy Stern, then Deputy Doublé, then final supplementary. Deputy Stern.
Thank you, sir. Minister, coming back to Minister's answer of Deputy Curtis, the predictions undertaken by that actuary that are outlined in the letter are based on an instruction from the government to increase the expected rate of return on investments by 1%. What advice did the Minister receive on this changed assumption about investment returns, and on what basis did the Minister issue this instruction?
Minister.
We know that the investments have outperformed expectations for several years. So it was on the basis of prior returns to the fund and advice of our investment experts as well in Treasury.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Did the Minister consider what assumptions other pension funds are making at the moment about expected rate of returns over the next few years? And why did she not ask the actuaries for their advice on what future return to set rather than from the past?
Minister.
I would anticipate that that kind of information would be part of the advice that we will receive from actuaries in the next year. In addition to the planned actuarial review, we will also be, I will also be commissioning the actuaries to undertake further work so that we can ensure that our social security fund remains fit for purpose and does what it needs to do for future generations of the island without putting too much burden on the taxpayer.
Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain to the Assembly if the predicted 1% isn't realised, what are the impacts of that? What happens to the fund?
Minister.
So, of course, pension funds are very long-term investments, and I'm sure that we all know from our own pension funds that when you're planning over a long-term investment, then you plan over the longer-term returns on the fund. So it may well be that in some years the investment returns aren't as high as other years, but over the long-term investment period, that does balance out.
Supplementary, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister mentioned that she is seeking further advice from the actuaries. Could she commit to sharing that advice as it's given with the relevant scrutiny panels and, if appropriate, with the Assembly, please?
Minister.
Yes, sir. I would hope that my scrutiny chair does know that I share advice with them on a free basis and confidential when I have to. I think that scrutiny and the role of this Assembly in decision making is incredibly important. I took a lot of convincing that this was the right thing to do. I expect the right level of scrutiny from this chamber, and I, of course, will provide them with the information that they need to make their own decision when we come to the budget debate.
Final supplementary, Deputy Bailiff.
Yes, sir. And I'm grateful to the Minister and Government for publishing that letter, but the letter makes clear that the only reason that the fund looks in rude health is because the Government has instructed the actuaries to consider the matter only with an 1% increase in investment returns. Had they not put that assumption in, the investment returns would have looked very much worse. The actuaries suggested at point 15 in their letter that the wisdom of the government's instruction to increase the rate of return could be assessed by the actuaries if the government wished. Has the Minister taken up this offer, and if not, why not?
Minister.
At the moment, that hasn't been taken up, but of course, as I said in my previous answer, we will be asking the actuaries to undertake their planned review and also be asking for that additional piece of work to do to give the public of Jersey and this Assembly the confidence that we're taking the right steps into the future.
Thank you, Minister. Question 2, Deputy Doublé will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister detail what support, if any, is being provided or offered to households considered to be Middle Jersey to assist with the cost of living? And if no support is being provided or offered, why not? And will he further advise how this group are considered when policy decisions are made regarding the cost of living?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. We don't. Let me start by saying I think members will know that the increases in cost of living are not unique to Jersey. That's something we're seeing globally, particularly in the West, due to geopolitical challenges. And of course, we import about 95% of what we consume, so we are at the mercy of other economies sometimes. However, there are levers we can pull to help reduce the impact of cost of living on islanders. Those have included, in line with our corporate strategic policy, a reduction in the cost of GP appointments. The hot school meals are now available in every state school. Government charges, fees and charges, we have a policy to keep those as low as possible. We have a cap at 2.5%, and quite often charges are put up below that. In addition to the forthcoming budget proposes increase to tax thresholds, with the income thresholds rising to £21,250 before people pay tax. Importantly, sir, as mentioned by the Social Security Minister, one of the big challenges islanders have been facing is that of childcare. We are proposing in the budget up to 15 hours of new free childcare, fully funded for 2 to 3-year-olds, to give every child the best start. This proposal would invest £4 million into childcare for 2 to 3-year-olds, creating an opportunity to families to save up to £6,000 a year in childcare costs, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I think that we understand very well the profiles of perhaps lower earners in the island, and we have that income support system to provide for those islanders. Could the Chief Minister outline, aside from the individual topic-based things he has outlined, what systematic work is being done to understand, for example, families who have a mortgage on one property that they own and are working full-time hours and have children, the struggles that families like that might be facing who are outside of the perhaps income support requirements?
Well, there's no sort of, as such, a clear definition of what the Deputy means by Middle Jersey. I think we know what she means, sir, but we tend to target support for islanders. We have general policies that help all islanders. For example, I mentioned the childcare support because that is universal. It's not means tested, so that's one example of where we're helping all islanders. I think you could argue that the introduction or the move to a living wage will help more islanders, those outside of the lower income support measures, because the impact of a minimum of a living wage increases wage levels across right through the pay scales. So we manage that, so we work on that based on our policy and strategy. That's always been to target the support of more of those people on lower incomes. But as I've explained, we are introducing more universal support packages moving forward, sir. But there is no clear definition of, well, I'm not sure what the Deputy means by Middle Jersey. Perhaps that's something we need to look to establish if we want to get more details for the Deputy.
Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. The government is, in its budget, reducing contributions to the Social Security Fund by £250 million with measures to spending to help islanders. Did the Chief Minister consider options such as time-limited cuts to tax or social security contributions, which would not have been a long-term drain on the fund? And if not, why not?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I think balancing the budget, because we've allowed, this Assembly, previous governments, have allowed the cost of running the public sector to grow exponentially. We needed to make a decision about how we invest taxpayers' money. And the government have decided to invest a bit less of that money in pension reserves and put more of that money, as the Social Security Minister explained in a previous answer, into supporting islanders. For example, the provision of much needed housing for looking after children, and of course increases and improvements to the health budget and the health we provide for islanders. If you start reducing social security contributions, that has a long-term impact. And once you start reducing them, they're much harder to bring them back up again. And so it's the same as, the argument is the same if we were to increase pensions. The long-term impact of that is far greater than what we're proposing. We are proposing a short-term reduction in the taxpayer contribution to the reserve funds, bearing in mind we are still proposing to put in £184 million during the course of this budget and forecast, which is more than has gone, a lot more than has gone in from the public, from the taxpayer in the last 5 years. So what we are actually doing is reinstating the contributions to the pension reserve fund, sir, and increasing what's going into them.
Supplementary.
Perhaps I wasn't clear. What I was suggesting was, as a cost of living measure, did the government consider taking short-term, say 2-year cuts in contributory benefits or taxes, which would not have had a long-term effect because they would have been short-term? Has the Minister considered whether, can the Chief Minister confirm whether that was considered, and if not, why not?
I thought I explained that in the opening part of the question, sir, but sorry if I wasn't clear. No, we didn't seriously consider that, because of it, I have explained we have to finally balance the books at the moment, given the increase in the cost of running the public sector. Now, this Assembly in the budget might decide they don't want to, they want to put even more money into the reserve fund, in which case we will have to look at what we spend, the taxes and the money we save on, and that will mean a significant reduction in some services or not introducing new services. For example, the £4 million for childcare, the money we need to build new children's homes, the increase in the health budget to provide better health for islands. That's a legitimate debate for the Assembly, but this government has decided, for the reasons explained numerous times in Scrutiny and here in the Assembly, that we think it's better use of taxpayers' money now to invest in the current needs of islanders, while still keeping that social security reserve in a very strong position.
Deputy Ozef, then Deputy Elliott, then final supplementary. Deputy Ozef.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister has been in this Assembly as long as I have, albeit with some absences, and he will recall many discussions about the need to find monies for improving public services, improving services at the same time of delivering efficiencies. And in committees and governments that I have been with him, would he agree that the cost of living is not just about reducing, albeit the previous questioner asks some very pertinent questions about reducing the contribution to social security, but is it not also, does his government also not continue to agree that a relentless focus on driving down domestic cost of living is important? And was he concerned to hear the comments of the retailers when they said that as a result of the flat rate card, all of the groceries in Jersey were going up?
Chief Minister.
I think there were a number of questions in there. Of course, we remain concerned about the cost of living in Jersey. We have done all along. And I remember the Deputy's frustrations when he was Treasury Minister, the limited impact we could have on the cost of living, because we don't have monetary policy, we have fiscal policy, so we are limited. In relation to the flat rate card, let me just explain that whilst that might see a very small increase in the cost of freight, in the short term, I believe that will bring benefits to freight because it will introduce more competition in the freight forwarding process moving forward. Right now, when we have only one freight operator delivering the vast majority of our freight, any increases, for example, the difference between what Condor paid and a new flat rate card can be paid, margin can be passed straight through to the retailers. But we want to see more competition in food retail. The Deputy knows we want to bring food prices down. That's perhaps where we need to be looking. Freight forwarding costs, food retail costs for competition. So, and I would also remind members that out of the two bidders in the tender process for the ferry service, both of them recommended, both of them put forward flat rates there. So whichever ferry operator we would have chosen, we would have seen an increase to the flat rate. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Sir, my constituents in St Saviour, but I think it's also across the island, are getting tired of hearing about jam tomorrow. They want to see action in this, they wanted to see action during the course of this assembly, and they haven't. And when they hear that grocery prices are going up, because that's what the retailers, all of them, said when they appeared for the scrutiny panel, they linked that directly towards the flat rate card. And so is he saying he is not concerned by the comments that the retailers advanced on oath public scrutiny hearing that their grocery prices were going up as a result of the flat rate card? Was he not concerned? And
I'm sorry, I take exception to the accusation of talking about jam tomorrow from the author of the jam tomorrow phrase used in this assembly, and the times when I go back to the Deputy's time in office when we had promises that never materialised, and we saw rises in the cost of living, significant rises in the cost of living through his time in office. But of course we know that wasn't all of his fault, sir, because at that time as well we were subject to rises in cost of living from factors outside of our control. This government has done more in the last 18 months to bear down on the cost of living and to support islanders with assistance than previous governments have, and that's something we continue to do, and hopefully the Assembly will continue to support that. The economic advice we have received in relation to the increase to the flat rate has had, will have a minimal impact on the cost of food. We are seeing huge increases to the cost of food. Just look across the UK and how the major multiples are seeing major. You speak to people, I have friends and family that live in the UK, and they talk about significant increases to the cost of food. It's something that's going on right across the world, and it's beyond our control. We don't like it, and we will do everything we can to help bear down on that, sir. But our choices are limited. Thank you.
Point of order, sir.
Yes.
May I ask, sir, the Chief Minister in his answer made a number of suggestions of policies that I may have been involved in, which I don't recognise, and facts. Do I have any recourse in order to ask the Chief Minister to withdraw such comments or seek? Someone just has to take the insult, sir.
It's just parliamentary discussion and debate, nothing unusual.
It sounded insulting, sir.
It wasn't meant to be insulting, sir.
Well,
I was just trying to make a point.
There's no
the
point of
Deputy
order,
can't
Chief
take
Minister.
it,
I've
so
dealt with the
dish it
point.
out.
I've dealt with the point. Yes, Deputy Talia.
So there has been a suggestion that the flat rate card is contributing excessively to the cost of living crisis in Jersey. Could the Chief Minister, whatever the facts of that are, and we may get to them at some point, would the Minister state whether he is dogmatic about the continuation of the flat rate card, or would he be open to suggesting that DFTS don't have to charge a flat rate for freight to allow for more dynamic pricing and more flexibility in the charging of freight for that company?
Chief Minister.
I think, as I said before, we like to be flexible, but I honestly think that a flat rate will work in the best interests moving forward. So it's going to provide some very small inflation in the short term, but that should quickly level out. But of course, I will say everything is possible. We can negotiate aspects of the contract at any time, any aspect of the contract at any time. The Economic Development Minister and his team can do that with the ferry operator, and that's an option on the table. So if we were to see an ongoing problem or continued challenges, if we fail to see more competition in the freight forwarding market, then that might be a time to look at renegotiating that to try and drive costs down. But right now, I think we need to stick to our guns in that sense, support more competition in the markets. We have to remember in that when there was a dynamic rate, the main freight forwarder were paying less than half of what new entrants into the market would have to pay for shipping rates. So that just eliminated all competition.
Supplementary?
Does the Chief Minister accept that economics might state that if there is very little traffic, let's say going on a Tuesday and Thursday, it might be normal for a company to incentivise more traffic, more freight going on those days by offering a discount? Currently, it's not possible for the FDS to offer discounts when there might be light freight days. Is that something the Minister would consider, especially if there is evidence that a non-flat rate card might actually produce better benefits for the consumer ultimately than a flat rate card?
Chief Minister.
Well, so I'm not sure it wouldn't. I'll have to pass that one over to the Economic Development Minister in due course, but I'm not sure that it would, because we have to remember that our ferry service has to be financially sustainable. Thank you, Minister.
At least one person agrees with you, Chief Minister.
I'm grateful for the Minister's support on that. We remember that previous ferry operator Condor Ferries, because of involvement in various private equity purchases and sales, ended up with severe financial difficulty. What we have here now is a partnership with an organisation, a large global organisation, that we believe will be much more financially secure and sustainable moving forward. And I think it's important we bear that in mind, sir, given the lifeline nature of the services they provide.
Final supplementary, Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Chief Minister for his answers. I can see that this current government, as with the previous government, is taking the cost of living challenges seriously and attempting to tackle them. And as the Chief Minister mentions, much of it is beyond our control. But does he agree that where we target our support is within our control? And would he agree that a piece of work is necessary to understand and define the needs of Middle Jersey so our policies and legislation can be targeted properly? Could he consider initiating this before the end of this term of office so it can be completed early in the next term to inform the policy making of the next Assembly?
I think the short answer to that is yes, insofar as I can ask the Cost of Living Strategy Group to put that on their agenda for the next meeting and consider that. First thing we need to do is have a definition of exactly what Middle Jersey is, because we are a small, I think, and united community. We tend to look at the islanders. You know, we try to do the best for all islanders, but we can certainly look at that, sir. And I think I speak on behalf of all ministers. I wish we could do more to bear down on the cost of living, and we will do everything we can to play our part, sir, in minimising the impact for all islanders. Thank you.
Question 3, Deputy Joseph will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise which head of expenditure in the proposed budget government plan 2026 to 2029 will be utilised to fund the safer routes to school on Bagatelle Road, and what the cost of this project is estimated to be? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Thank the Deputy for his question. So it's important that we all take the necessary action to enhance road safety in the island. The Safer Routes to School programme has been partially funded from the Car Park Trading Fund, which is allocated to support road safety and sustainable transport initiatives. As such, it forms part of the normal revenue head of expenditure of the Infrastructure Department. This is supplemented by money from the Climate Emergency Fund, where schemes meet its criteria, as well as Planning Obligation Agreement funding. Bagatelle Road is a multi-year programme of linked schemes at various stages of development. This year, we've spent £570,000, including £300,000 from the Climate Emergency Fund, on a scheme development and construction, and this includes internal staff cost recharges. The value of the full remaining programme is estimated to be £2.3 million. This is currently unfunded and outside of the scale of funding that can be provided from the return to the Car Park Trading Fund, and to be able to continue, additional budget would need to be provided through the Government Capital Programme. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary.
I'm grateful for the Minister to explain to the representatives of St Saviour that the cost is 2.3 million. I was previously advised that it might be 1.3. Given the importance of this improvement for the safety of children and parents and visitors to St Saviour's School, and the proposed generous donation of land not in the state's ownership in order to deal with this, would the Minister give any indication of when the school may actually see this, at least elements of the most important safety considerations actually advanced? Is he saying that there's no prospect of it next year?
Minister.
I'm not saying that at all, sir. In fact, sir, I'm actively working with the Constable and the Education Department. Sir, we recently met at Grainville, where we allocated parking for the school to use. We are continuing to work. The 1.3 million the Deputy refers to, I think, is for the St Saviour's School field path, as it's referred to. Next year, sir, we plan to do some enabling works. We've done extensive consultation this year, and we would hope to carry out works in 27 and 28. Thank you, sir.
Conatable St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Minister for the 20 spaces allocated to St Saviour's School at the top end of Grainville. It is very helpful. As the Minister is well aware, sir, most of the island schools are in St Saviour, and in particular Bagatelle Road and the surrounding area. Will the Minister agree to reprioritise his budget for this year in order for this scaled down project of an extra pathway opposite St Saviour's School to go ahead, sir?
Minister.
Sir, we've done extensive works in the parish of St Saviour on traffic safety, sir, road safety. So this year we've spent significant funds opposite the Girls' College with a crossing. So we continue to do that work, we're continuing to do the planning, and we're going to carry out the works as soon as we practically can. There's significant work planned for next year, including the enabling works. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. I would be grateful if we can have a meeting with the Minister, myself as Constable and St Saviour deputies to get the full updates on what's happening in the parish, sir. Thank you.
Minister.
So I'd be happy to do that, sir. The Constable will be aware that officers have tried to get onto the October Roads Committee agenda but have been unsuccessful, but I'm available to meet with the Constable and the deputies whenever. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister please outline what work could have been carried out or would have been carried out where the requested funding put into the budget, please, in the St Saviour School Action Plan?
Minister.
Sir, members will be aware that for some of the work we will require planning permission, sir, and so we have a whole process to go through. And so for next year, sir, the enabling works and the detailed planning is the work that we'll be undertaking to ensure that we can carry out works in 27 and 28. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Bailiff.
So is it fair to say that the work is still going to happen, but it's just taking a little bit longer?
So it's about priorities, sir, and we will be looking to do some further work at the southern end of Bagatelle Road, sir, in 2026 as part of the Lavarine scheme, sir, and we will continue to work the planning. I'd estimate we'll be investing around £500,000, sir, in road safety initiatives in and around the St Saviour's area. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Final question, Deputy Taddeo.
Thank you, sir. So is any budget being put aside for the Safer Routes to School initiative to focus on green lanes, as many children use green lanes on the way to school, especially to safeguard against any excess speeding on those routes, which may be dangerous to children?
I thank the Deputy for his question, sir. Green lanes are essential, sir, for not only for cyclists but also for people walking. And we have got a scheme that we believe would be considerably safety improvements in the parish of St Saviour. So far, sir, unfortunately, the Roads Committee are unsupportive of making a road, which is currently two-way, a no-through road, sir, but we'll continue progressing. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
And will the Minister give consideration to actually making sure that green lanes do become greener, so perhaps restricting certain lanes to residents only, perhaps even to bicycles, horses, pedestrians, and dare I say electric vehicles, sir, which of course can also speed, but at least don't have any emissions.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy will be aware that all of the green lanes are parish byroads and don't come under my ministry, sir. I am pleased to confirm, sir, that we have changed the design of the signs for green lanes, which reflect the Guernsey sign, which has a person walking, a person cycling and a person riding a horse to try and bring that ambience to those green lanes. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Joseph, final supplementary.
Would the Minister accept that whilst on the one hand the road improvements which he cites taking up most of the time that he's answered the questions about schools, because as the Constable rightly says, most schools are in St Saviour and so all the works are absolutely necessary. But would the Minister understand why representatives of St Saviour and the Constable and the municipal authorities feel very strongly about this Bagatelle Road improvement for the primary school? It is dangerous. It has been a problem for a long time. The work of the parish has ensured that there is actually a solution there. I'm not quite sure what the communication is because my Constable was actually looking rather unclear when he was saying that other things were being communicated with the parish. And perhaps he would agree that it might be appropriate for all of the elected representatives to be able to support with our Constable the Minister in his decision making, so he's under no illusion that this is a very important and prioritised matter for our constituents.
Sir, as I said at the outset, sir, road safety is vital that we all take seriously, sir. So this morning I was interviewed about road safety in St Peter's, where people are ignoring signs for direction and speed, sir. It's under all of our responsibilities to support those initiatives and do what we can. So I've personally met with the Roads Committee of St Saviour, who were not receptive to the ideas that we put forward to make it easier for people to commute to and from Bagatelle. And unfortunately, we're not able to get onto the October Roads Committee agenda. So we're working with St Saviour and Grouville to make it connectable, and I will continue to pursue that, sir, and I'm more than happy to, as I said earlier, to meet with the Constable and Deputies. And I reiterate, following a meeting with the Education Minister, myself and the Constable, we allocated 20 parking spaces, sir, to ease the congestion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 4, Deputy Alex Curtis will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development.
Thank you, sir. And may I raise a defo on Deputy Moore?
Members consent to raise a defo on Deputy Moore? Okay. The defo is raised.
Thank you, sir. Following the comments made by the Chief Executive Officer of Ports of Jersey to the Public Accounts Committee on the 15th of October 2025, that the request to explore visitor accommodation at La Folly came from the Ports Policy Ministerial Group, PPMG, will the Minister, as the PPMG Chair, advise how this request originated and whether all members of the PPMG agreed to pursue this use for the site?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, the PPMG, the Ports Policy Ministerial Group, made the request of Ports of Jersey Limited to explore visitor accommodation options for the La Folly site at its meeting of the 23rd of June 2023. The minutes from that meeting record that approval was given by the group, which was attended by the then Chief Minister, Minister for Treasury and Resources, Minister for Infrastructure, and myself as the group's chair. Since then, the PPMG, instituted again under the current Chief Minister, has received regular updates from Ports of Jersey on the project's progress. It has remained the group's shared position that the La Folly site should be developed as hotel accommodation to breathe new life to that area of St Helier, a much loved and valued historic building, and to invigorate Jersey's visitor economy.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I hope the Minister can, in my supplementary, address where this originated. And for the avoidance of doubt, will the Minister be able to advise whether he, his officers, or any of those members listed had discussions with any hotel providers about the La Folly site prior to issuing this request to Port to explore the use, and if so, will he detail the substance of these discussions?
Minister.
Sir, prior to the meeting of PPMG, I had already met with the former Chief Minister and the Minister for Home Affairs to discuss the La Folly site and its potential use as either a headquarters for the Sea Cadets or a hotel. Having engaged the former Home Affairs Minister on the site's use, the request was made of Ports of Jersey Limited to proceed with scoping options for hotel accommodation. This position is consistent with the Ports Policy Framework, which confirms the government's support for the redevelopment of Jersey's harbour estates, and in a way that incorporates opportunities to develop visitor accommodation and to protect its cultural and historic characteristics. I think it's really important to understand that this is all going back a couple of years, but from my perspective, the intention was to have development done as quickly as possible. Obviously, many islanders have seen La Folie, and many islanders complain about the La Folie site remaining undeveloped. And I know from my perspective, one of the reasons for thinking that hotel accommodation would be a good use was because obviously it is already a listed building, and so maintaining the pub as a pub or as a restaurant in some way is a good idea, and because that fits with that listing. And a commercial use would, in theory, lead to a faster development as opposed to just constant stagnation and non-development of that site.
Sir, if I could, I thank the Minister, but could he address the substance of my question, which was whether any discussion with hotel providers or groups took place by any ministers or officers?
Yes, that was a question that was part of the question that was asked.
None to my knowledge. I do remember when I was a member of Scrutiny in 2018, possibly 2019, having a discussion with somebody who was part of a portfolio of people who had their own plans for the site. That was long before I was a minister, but what that did do was help me understand that there was the potential viability for it as a site, but there was never any formal discussions that I'm aware of.
Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. I wonder, is the Minister aware of the planning framework for this site as described in the Centennial Urban Character Appraisal, which would limit buildings to 3 stories? And does he believe that a planning application for visitor accommodation should fit within the parameters of this policy?
So, as I understand planning policy, it is there to be used as a guide, and I do not ask that any application necessarily fit within that. That is why we have the planning officer and planning committee and planning appeals system. So if somebody wishes to present an application which is outside of those policies, that is their choice, but they obviously know that there is a higher risk of it not being accepted as a result. But that to me is the planning framework, and I do not, and I think we get into something of a mess as an island when we insist on only developments that are not commercially viable be presented to planning. And I have a lot of criticism of the current planning, Bridging Island plan, precisely because I feel it is unrealistic in its limitations that it places on development in Jersey.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Has the Minister looked at the brief that the ports have produced for the site, which, if the sums are done, suggests that with the square meterage that they want to achieve and the of rooms they want to achieve and the square meterage of the site, they would have to build a building possibly 6 or 7 stories high. Does he not think that it is beholden on government organisations to have some respect for things such as the St Helier Urban Character Appraisal and planning policies to protect listed buildings in places, including their settings?
So I'll go back to my previous answer. I think any applicant can provide any application they wish. The whole point of having a planning system, which the Deputy used to be Minister for Planning, and he will understand that the system is there precisely to weigh up applications against policy and decide whether or not to go ahead. So I think, I'll say it again, this Assembly has slowed development in all sorts of areas by insisting that the applications from state-owned entities fit within certain parameters before they even go forward. I think there has to be the potential where those parameters are seen as not being commercially viable, that an application can go forward from a state-owned entity which is outside those parameters, but then that is for the planning system to decide, and that is why we have the planning system, and it is a strong planning system, from officer to committee to independent appeal and decision by the Minister. So I think it is entirely to be left to the planning system to decide whether any application is appropriate or not. It is not for me or any other member of the Assembly to decide that unilaterally.
Final supplementary, Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister might have read the countless amount of public commentary that don't feel that the proposed use aligns with this. Will he ensure that, whilst conversations are ongoing, that the public's views are taken into account as to the future use? The Minister, in saying that, the Minister highlighted the Ports Policy Framework is there to respect cultural and historic uses of the harbour. And so I ask him to pursue this because I think a lot of users of the harbour and the public don't think that the proposed use aligns necessarily with the Ports Policy Framework's ambition of protecting the historic uses.
Minister.
Sir, I've got to admit, I don't necessarily agree with the Deputy. I think a harbour has to primarily be a functional harbour. I think preserving a harbour purely because of the fact that it is old means that it is very difficult to develop that harbour for economic use of the island. The harbour is one of our most important economic facilities in this island. And to stop development in that harbour because of wanting to maintain the way it looked 200 years ago is a really dangerous place for Jersey to be. But that is just an opinion that I have. The point being that it is not my opinion that matters. It is not the Deputy's opinion that matters. It is the opinion of the planning officer, followed by the planning committee, followed by an independent planning officer, and then potentially appealed by the Minister. The planning system, which the Deputy knows incredibly well, possibly better than anybody else in this Assembly, is there to take into account the public opinions. And the public's opinions will be presented in consultation with regard to any planning application that comes forward. And that is the place where the public opinion will be weighed against policy, against the application. That's why we have a planning system. This chamber is not the planning system and should not be the planning system. It is the officer, committee, and then appeal beyond that. That is the planning system, and I leave it to them to decide, and they will take into account public opinion.
Thank you, Minister. Question 5, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether any consideration has been given to amending the scheme of free GP appointments for children to a means-tested model targeted at supporting children in lower-income households?
Minister.
So the short answer is no. The longer answer is that I would encourage the Deputy to look at my party manifesto, which is absolutely clear on my position around access to primary health care. I was incredibly proud when Deputy Alves was able to bring a proposition to this Assembly, and the Assembly accepted it, which made GP appointments free for all children, and that should continue.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Obviously, with the health insurance fund, with a fund value of 101 million, forecast to go down to about 72 million in 4 years' time. So what actions is the Minister going to take to try and curtail the extent of expenditure?
Minister.
When it comes to expenditure, it is important to consider that across the whole health service. Things like free G appointments to children does relieve potential pressures on things like the emergency department, because worried parents can check issues with GPs without fear of not being able to afford an appointment. As I have said time and time again in Scrutiny, I am working closely with the Health Minister. The Health Minister has a far-reaching piece of work around health budgets and health funding, and it is really important that we see primary care as part of that.
Deputy Taddeo.
Would the Minister speak to the advantages of not means testing for young children when it comes to GP visits? And does she agree that actually those advantages might include that means testing itself can be quite an expensive and complicated process, but also that children generally themselves don't have independent wealth or income, and therefore children should not necessarily be expected to pay for their own GP visits?
Minister.
Yes, sir. I'm always very mindful that children and young adults don't have independent income necessarily, and of course that's why we extended the GP access to full-time students as well, in acknowledgement of that. I think we need to be very careful when we talk about means testing. Just a few moments ago, the Chief Minister was asked about cost of living pressures on middle-income earners. Such a means test on GP visits for children would absolutely hit possibly those middle income earners that the Assembly is so concerned about. This is a very real factor in relation to cost of living. People should not be afraid to go to their GP. People should seek as early intervention as possible, and that will lead to further savings in the long run, both in terms of quality of life for people, but also in savings in the secondary care sector.
Supplementary? Final question from Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. The previous question covered most of what I wanted to ask, but does the Minister agree that children's human rights cannot and should not be means tested?
Minister.
Yes, absolutely, I agree with that.
Supplementary? Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Question 6, Deputy Scott will put to the Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair advise whether the PPC has produced a written policy setting out the manner in which the Code of Conduct for elected members will be enforced to ensure fair and consistent treatment of members and consideration of mitigation factors? And if not, why not?
Chair of PPC.
Thank you, sir. The Privileges and Procedures Committee has not produced such a written policy. The Deputy is aware that PPC is working on amendments to the Code of Conduct. An earlier proposition was withdrawn in order to make changes, and the committee will return with a revised proposition in due course. As with the previous version, however, the revised code will be accompanied by guidance that is intended to help everyone, including members, understand how the code works and how it is administered. There is otherwise already clarity regarding the process for complaints. The Commissioner for Standards has published a report outlining her approach to her responsibilities, and both the Commissioner and PPC must follow the provisions laid out in the Commissioner for Standards law and in standing orders. The Code and those provisions provide for the fair and consistent treatment of members. Any mitigating factors presented by members in respect of the Code are considered by PPC, and I have no doubt by the Commissioner as well. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Will this guidance extend to the handling of complaints by the PPC? For example, I have one islander who contacted me regarding a communication regarding a member's conduct that he sent to the former chair, on which he's heard nothing, not even a suggestion that he should contact the Commissioner for Standards directly. Will such guidance or a policy be provided so that there's some transparency, so that states members and the public can know whether the PPC's values are in line with their own?
Chair of PPC.
Thank you, sir. Guidance for policy will certainly be included in the Code of Conduct, and I understand that the member has made a contribution to PPC where she has made suggestions for changes to that policy, which will be brought before the end of this term. I'm confident of that. As regards reporting to the Commissioner, it is all members of the public's right to report any allegations or possible breaches of the Code of Conduct to the Commissioner, and I would most certainly advise members of the public and members to do such.
Sir,
Thank you.
just a point of order. I don't believe the Chair answered my question, which was about an actual policy regarding the handling of complaints.
Chair, did you cover that about complaints?
Yes, sir. If any complaints are received by the PPC, they will be brought up by the PPC at their general meetings. Thank you.
Question 7, Deputy War will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. In relation to school meal sponsor content article published in the Jersey Evening Post on the 27th of September 2025, will the Chief Minister advise if this article was sponsored by government and, if it was, explain why, state the cost to publish the article and advise which department paid for the publication?
Yes, so the sponsored content was placed as part of a campaign in order to raise awareness among parents of the school meals programme and therefore ensure that as many primary school children as possible can benefit from having a hot and nutritious school meal at lunchtime. The article was part of a wider campaign to keep the public informed about the progress of the CSP priorities and upcoming developments. That included video interviews and other content that was also shared through social media channels, through the social media channels of all island media and the government's social media channels, sir. The total cost of that was £897. That was paid for from the communications budget, which is part of the Cabinet Office, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. What is the budget allocation for providing sponsored content to the JEP in 25-26? If you don't have that number to hand, maybe you can let me have that. Is there a danger that sponsored content is seen by the public as propaganda ahead of the next election?
Chief Minister.
No, I would hope not, sir. The idea is, and it's important, and when we do advertorials or whatever you want to call them, it's clearly labelled sponsored content, which it was in this case. It's absolutely clear, top of the page, that this was sponsored content. And it's important we do that from time to time. We can't always get the stories and the information we out as part of the news stories, because some of it we deem to be important that parents and children know about might not be considered newsworthy. That's why I think sponsored content is sometimes important. So I don't know what the exact budget is. It's not a lot, sir, but it's part of the communications budget, but I'm happy to let the Deputy to look at that and let the Deputy have that figure. Thank you.
Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. I hope the Chief Minister does accept that there would be legitimate worries about the potential for sponsored content becoming political propaganda. And could he therefore advise what guidelines are in place to ensure that we don't get sponsored content that advises the public on the great work that the Chief Minister has been doing over the last 2 years and the government's work to be the best government that the island has ever had?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I thank the Deputy for his compliments. I'm not sure we deserve them just yet. We've got more work to do, of course. I think sponsored content is something that's used very rarely, very occasionally, when it's felt we need to get important messages across, and the government spends a lot of money on advertising. It's from roadworks to notices and to other important aspects. I think the school meals programme, something started by Deputy Renniff's government, or the government that he was part of, so I have to share the credit with them for that, is so important to the development of our children that we felt on this occasion some sponsored content would help get the message across. I don't think anybody can mistake some sponsored content promoting the benefits of school meals with propaganda. I think that's quite ridiculous to assume that, but I do take on board the border principle, which is why, sir, it's not used very often, but only used where we think it's necessary and for the right reasons.
So I did ask what the guidelines were. The substance of my question was what the guidelines are to prevent political propaganda.
Yes, indeed. Any guidelines governing the use of this?
I'm not sure I've seen any guidelines that specifically state the word propaganda, but I can certainly ask the communications team to look at that. The guidelines I have seen have all been very sensible, proper and appropriate, and work generally well. And I think our communications especially across the government, social media channels, and the advertising and editorial work we do has been beneficial to the public and sharing information.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Can I therefore ask what advice the Chief Minister took in relation to this piece of sponsored content and its appropriateness to check whether it met the criteria?
Chief Minister.
I didn't have any advice on it, sir. This was something that the Communications Department carried out, I presume, with the working closely with the Education Department, sir. I think it was a good advertorial. I think it was important, and I fully supported it. So I don't have sight of every single advert, every single decision that's made along those lines, but I'd like to reassure members, sir, that our communications work, I think, is very carefully considered by the team, so it's something I fully support.
So what does it come to when the government has to pay the local newspaper to put out government propaganda, especially when they used to do it for free, sir? So is the real issue here not actually about government, but about oversight of the media? And does the Minister have, would he listen to the legitimate concerns? Would the Chief Minister listen to the legitimate concerns? And would he also answer the question about who is it that writes the sponsored content? Could he confirm whether the sponsored content is written in-house by his own officers, by government officers, and then put to print? Or is it journalists for hire that we're seeing here working effectively on behalf of government, being paid for by the taxpayer?
Chief Minister.
I'm not sure who wrote the article, sir. It all depends. I think sometimes the articles like that could be provided by the purchaser of advertising. Sometimes it can be written by the supplier of the advertising. We all know that media, and I think we have very good media here, and the community aspect of what is covered in our media is second to none. I don't always agree with some of the news content. Some of the headlines are a bit misleading, but the media over here are legitimate businesses and can run on the fact that they work on the back of their revenues from membership, providing access to the news, and advertising. I don't think there's anything wrong with the government, as it has done for many, many years. You can go back a long time when we gave exclusivity to the media on notices. I think those days have passed now, but I think the media play an important part of working with the government in sharing certain types of information. I haven't seen any part of that related to any form of propaganda whatsoever. I suppose you could make that accusation to any business advertising with the media. Any big advertisers might not be criticised by the news because they're spending money on advertising. I can assure the members, sir, that doesn't apply to the government. Thank you.
Supplementary, then final supplementary from Deputy War. Supplementary, Deputy Taddeo.
So would the Chief Minister undertake to give wider consideration to the appropriateness both of the government using advertorials, as they might be called, where on the one hand, of course, government are free to write letters to the JEP or any media, which they do without paying. They can take out adverts, which they do paying for, but actually when there is a comms unit, so which is employed by government, there's an expectation, I think, from the taxpayer and from the public that the blurring of lines shouldn't take place. Would the Minister give consideration to what the policy should be of any government, not just his, when it comes to the use of sponsored content which may be written by otherwise independent journalists?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I want to reiterate, I don't believe there has been any blurring of lines. I wouldn't support any blurring of lines, and I will ask the Communications Department to remind ministers of our policy on that, and I'm happy to reassure members of the position. It is a valid point that raised by the questioner and very deputies, and we will continue to make sure that if we do use advertising or advertorial, we do it in a proper way so that it doesn't impinge upon the freedom of the media.
Final supplementary, Deputy War.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make one point. I just want to make to the Chief Minister, there is a very big difference between business providing advertorial and governments providing advertorial. Businesses do it, and everybody knows what businesses are about, and that's their emphasis. Government, this is a wider communication thing. So I don't see this parallel between what businesses do and what governments do. Anyway, to come on to my final question is, so how many other pages have been sponsored, does the Chief Minister understand? And are there any more plans to provide any more sponsored content in the Jersey Evening Post?
Chief Minister.
So just dealing with it, I hear what the Deputy says about business, and I wasn't trying to make a comparison between government and businesses, but businesses are sometimes part of the news for various reasons. And you know, there could be a time when a business has done something wrong, but because they are a big advertiser, you could say, well, hold on a minute, why aren't the media being... But I have never seen any evidence of that. I think our media are free and fair and rightly firm where they have to be. I don't know how many advertorials we've done in the past. I haven't seen very many, and I don't know how many we've got planned for the future, if we have got any planned for the future. So, but I certainly asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 8, Deputy Joan will put to the Minister for External Relations. Deputy Joan.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the implementation of the Sustainable Finance Action Plan and advise whether the current timetable for delivery by 2027 remains on track and whether sufficient resources are in place to ensure the effective delivery of this plan?
Is this the Minister?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for your question. Sir, a significant amount of work has been undertaken since the launch of the Sustainable Finance Action Plan in November 2024. From a government perspective, 50% of the actions have already been completed, which include a review of new products, industry upskilling, fiduciary duties, such as raising awareness of the compatibility between fiduciary duties and sustainable investments, anti-greenwashing measures, and sustainability risk management. 40% of the actions are being implemented on a business-as-usual basis, which include international engagement by external relations and financial services officers, monitoring of market access issues, environmental crime prevention, and jurisdictional data gathering. 10% of the actions are currently under review, including inclusion of mandatory corporate sustainability disclosures for businesses. We believe the plan remains on track and sufficiently resourced, as the results and achievements have shown. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Given the importance of sustainable finance to Jersey's international reputation, does the Minister intend to publish an updated delivery plan or progress report so that stakeholders can assess how implementation is proceeded against the original commitments? So I note the Minister has mentioned this already in her answer, but could it be done in a report, and is this being planned?
This is the Minister.
Sir, I don't know the answer to that. The plan has been delivered. We've clearly done a lot of work. I'm not sure there'll be benefit in then producing a report, but that's something I will ask the Minister about. Thank you, sir.
Question 9, Deputy Tallier will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Tallier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state at what point in the contract at what point the condition for a flat rate card for freight was added to the tender process, and what risk assessment of this policy, if any, was carried out, whether its introduction was supported by other members of the Council of Ministers?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the aspiration, as distinct from the word condition used in the Deputy's question for a flat rate card, in any new concession agreement, was set out in the joint Jersey-Guernsey invitation to tender and followed through in the Jersey-only invitation to tender. This was not a policy. However, as previously explained to the Deputy in a panel hearing, there is no economic logic for an exclusive operator of the most important part of the supply chain, the ferry service, to offer discounted rates in favour of any one freight forwarding firm, and thereby endangering the most important part of the supply chain through development of an uninvestable situation. The inclusion of a flat rate card within the final DFDS bid was welcomed by the Council of Ministers and approved as part of the selection of DFDS as the preferred bidder. That approval by the Council of Ministers. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
So we have heard that nobody asked for the DFDS, for the flat rate card that DFDS now have in place. Could the Minister confirm whether or not DFDS would have been granted the tender process, the tender, if they hadn't included a flat rate within their bid?
Minister.
Sir, that's not a question that I can answer because it's an entirely hypothetical question, sir. DFDS did include a flat rate in their bid, and they were chosen for many reasons other than the flat rate. It's not possible because they did not supply one that didn't have the flat rate. So, thank you, sir.
Mr. Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has defended the flat rate card on many occasions by saying that it encourages competition in the freight market. Has the department conducted any analysis to determine whether the size of Jersey's market is big enough to support competition in the freight market?
Sir, I don't think such analysis is likely to be a very easy analysis to undertake. What I will say, sir, is that of the cost of delivering goods to the shelves in your shops and the supermarkets in Jersey, 60% of that cost, first of all, that cost is just 7% of the cost of goods on your shelf. So a £10 item that you buy today, 70 pence is the cost of distribution. Of that 70 pence, 60% is the freight forwarder's cost. 35% is the ferry cost. So of that £10, just 24 pence is the cost of the ferry. 3.5 pence or thereabouts is port's dues. And the vast majority of that 70 pence is the freight forwarder's cost. Now, as I've just stated, the ferry service is the single most important part of the supply chain. And costs were being pushed, cost pressures, and the pressure to reduce costs were being pushed by the freight forwarders, who take the majority of the money from distribution. Their desire to reduce costs were being pushed onto Condor, the previous ferry service provider. As a result, we were provided with a ferry service that could not invest in new ferries, and I am sad to say that reporting recently has also suggested that there was a lack of safety as a result of that as well. And that is why, by removing the pressure to reduce costs from the ferry service and putting that pressure via competition into the largest part, the 60% of the cost of distribution, which is where the freight forwarders are, that is the appropriate place to have competition and to have cost reductions. It is not appropriate to have cost reduction being placed onto the ferry provider, because then we end up with the situation we had, which was a ferry service that could not be invested in, and a ferry service that may well have been operating in ways that were unsafe.
Supplementary.
I'm grateful to the Minister for his answer, which is very interesting. However, it still leaves unanswered the question of whether or not Jersey's freight market can support multiple operators. And the Minister said he didn't think it was possible to analyse this. But surely, given that the flat rate card has become such an integral part of the contract, this would be a very important objective. Otherwise, there is a risk that in trying to encourage competition in the freight delivery market, which the Minister says is important, he is chasing an impossible dream.
So, I find it fascinating that deputies in this Assembly and others in this Assembly are very, very interested in protecting the freight forwarding part of the market, which takes the vast majority of the cost of distribution, as opposed, and is not an area of potential failure and injury to the supply chain, in the same way that the ferry service is a single point of failure and potential injury to the supply chain. It is vital that Jersey protects its ferry services. It is not so vital that Jersey protects any one company in the freight forwarding market. We have seen over the past few years how the freight forwarding market has pushed other operators out, and the dominant supplier has come through. Now, we do know that there is, and I don't know what the subjects are, but we do know that there is currently an investigation into practices in the freight forwarding market, I believe, by the JCRA. It will be interesting to see what that comes out with. But I would say to the Deputy that the companies that take the majority of the cost of distribution, the 60% of the cost of distribution, which goes to those companies or that main company in the freight forwarding market, is not as important as the 40% or 35% that is used for the ferry service. The ferry service is vital. Any one freight forwarding company is not vital in the same way that the ferry service is. Jersey needs to protect its ferry service, and it needs to make sure that its ferry service can be invested in to get new ferries. The previous ferry service could not invest in new ferries. We know this because twice we asked for propositions from the previous provider of ferry services to Jersey that included investment in new ferries. And twice we received propositions that did not include investment in new ferries, because it was not possible for that ferry provider to invest in new ferries. I believe this Assembly should be very, very clear. The ferry service needs to be protected. Competition and cost reduction is appropriate in the 60% of the cost of distribution which is used by the freight forwarders and taken by the freight forwarders. It is not appropriate in the 35% that is used and pays for the ferry service, which is the single point of failure in our supply chain. This Assembly and any government needs to protect that ferry service. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Tadio.
Thank you, sir. Can I put for my final supplementary the statement given to our panel by the Chief Executive of Sandpiper? He said that the people who bring most product to the island are the food retailers. In the past, we benefited from volume discounts as a result of that. That is absolutely common business practice. It works in every single business across the world. The reality is that one single measure, the flat rate card, has created additional costs on food in Jersey. That was completely unnecessary, and I reject the idea that we need a flat rate card to make a competitive market. Could the Minister state, first of all, did he consult with any of the retailers about the economics of this and the potential impact it would have on them? And could he tell us why he thinks the Chief Executive in his statement there is wrong?
Well, the second part of your question is not in order, because understanding Order 10, the question shall not ask whether any statement in the media or made by any individual who is not a member of the States is accurate, but the first part is in order.
So could I rephrase? It wasn't in the media, so it was a statement that was made to our panel.
Yes.
But I will simply ask, is it the case, does he agree that it's common business practice across the world for volume discounts to be applied, it's basic economics, and that this one single measure may have had the unintended consequence of pushing up food prices in Jersey?
Yes.
So, the Chief Executive of Sandpiper, and indeed the Chief Executive of any supermarket in Jersey, their job is to protect the profits of their business, sir. So, those profits in the past were perhaps indirectly and perhaps unintentionally being protected by the beating down of the cost of the ferry service, sir. That beating down of the cost of the ferry service resulted in what now appears to be potentially an unsafe service, but definitely an uninvestable service, sir. It is not my job to protect the profits of the supermarkets. We know that supermarkets in Jersey are very profitable. We do not get the benefit of seeing their books. We do not get the benefit of seeing what profit they make. But what we do see now with the new situation with the concession agreement is we know exactly how much money is being made by the ferry service, and we know exactly how much money needs to be made in order for that ferry service to invest in new ferries, sir. That is the situation we now have. We have competition taking place in the freight forwarding market. The dominant player in that market, I have no doubt, is very upset that their domination has been, is open to competition now, sir. But that is the appropriate place for competition, sir. The appropriate place for competition is not in the ferry provider part of it, because we end up with an unsafe and an uninvestable ferry service. Sir, that is why there is a flat rate card. It is to protect the ferry service. The supermarkets need to compete amongst themselves. We know that supermarket business models rely on reducing supplier costs. Well, the ferry service is one of their suppliers, but they cannot reduce the cost of the ferry service because we need a safe and investable ferry service, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 10, Deputy... Oh, forgive me. Yes, question 10, Deputy Wilson will put to the Chief Minister. Yes, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Further to the comments made by the Chief Executive in the Public Accounts Committee hearing on the 8th of October 2025 regarding the precarious position of government finances, will the Chief Minister advise whether that is also his assessment and in what ways he considers that the proposed budget, Government Plan 26 to 29, will improve the financial position of the island?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I think, let me first start by taking a step back. And when we first came into government, it became apparent, although we'd known for some time, that the cost of running the public sector had grown exponentially. So I described the situation as a finely balanced. We have done a significant amount of work to understand that and to put the facts on the table, and that's why we introduced policies to curb growth. I think the second thing that confronted us was the reality that we had used most, if not all, of our cyclical reserves to deal with the pandemic and its aftermath. And there was very little left in the tank, as it were, to move forward with our cyclical reserves. The third thing we realised is that we had come to depend more and more on the financial centre, the financial services sector, to support growth and public finances. We thought it was urgent that we take a deep look in how to underpin the growth and competitiveness of that sector, and that work is going on now. And once we could see both sides of the P&L, the money going in and money going out, we had to have and introduce effective policy responses to deal with that. And that's what we have attempted to do with the budget, which is finely balanced. It's because, having rightly reused our reserves to get through the pandemic, we have found that we're not going to be able to rebuild them as quickly as we would have liked to have done, sir. Of course, we recognise that there's a need to act on this. We intend to streamline the government further, sir, trim current spending in the areas of public sector, redivert money to frontline services in areas where we think we need it most, such as fire and rescue, children's services, health and education. And we intend taking a longer term approach to investment to boost the economy, sir. And we intend to make sure, with the work we're doing on competitiveness, that our financial services sector can continue to grow into the future.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to the Chief Minister for his explanation. But could I also ask whether he would consider that over the last 2 years, having carried forward a number of rising public sector pay costs and persistent overspends, that this is also a product of some of the choices his government has made over the last 2 years, which does continue to include a growing reliance on reserves to paper over the cracks. And can he explain how islanders can have confidence that the budget will restore stability when many of the pressures identified have yet to be resolved?
Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. The Deputy's quite right. The budgets, the last 2 budgets, have been of the construction of the current government, of the choices of the current government, and ultimately we've been able to persuade the Assembly the right way, and I hope we can do that with this forthcoming budget. When we came into power, we inherited a teacher strike, which, if wasn't sorted, could have cost a lot more in the long term than it did to put that right. That was relatively straightforward, because I said before, the previous government and the teachers' unions have come very close but not managed to resolve it. At the same time, we took a deep look at the public sector and how public sector pay growth until that time in nearly all sectors had been well below the cost of living. So the 3-year pay deal that was agreed was cost of living plus 1%, which brought them back into line with cost of living, so the public sector could look back. I thought that was important. We needed a stable public sector to deliver the policies we're delivering now. Of course, part of the policy we are delivering is to streamline that public sector. We've reduced headcount, we've curbed the growth in expenditure. The growth in 24 with about 6.5%, the growth in public expenditure that's proposed in the budget is about 5.25%. So it's not a lot, but we have curbed the growth and we're beginning to point that back in the right direction. But I would reiterate that there's going to be a lot of challenges ahead to continue to balance the books and provide the public with the services that we all want them to have. So moving forward, this Assembly and future governments will have a large task to keep the books balanced, and it is vitally important we balance the books. Of course, the law doesn't allow us not to balance the books, but I'd also point to other measures we've introduced, such as the Investing in Jersey programme, which as part of that will ring-fence the capital spend, sir. And I mention that because by ring-fencing the capital...
Answer's now been almost 2 minutes, Chief Minister.
OK, sir. Thank you. Sorry. Do apologise.
Sir, could I raise a point of clarification,
yes,
please? Sorry, I just wanted the Chief Minister to explain about confidence, and I don't believe he's been able to address that particular issue.
Sorry, sir, I did run out of time. I do apologise, but
Very
I'll
briefly.
do it quickly now, sir. Well, I hope we can maintain the public's confidence and build the confidence. It's challenging for the States Assembly to do that, but we will do everything in our power to build public confidence. And I think we can do that by providing safe and stable finances. And that's what this budget intends to do.
Questions from Deputy Moore, then Deputy Renouf, then final supplementary. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Given his service as Deputy Chief Minister in the period from 2018 to 2022, which saw a notable increase in public expenditure, could the now Chief Minister outline why he was surprised by the position of public finances when he assumed this office?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Very quickly into the sort of not even quite halfway into the last term, we got hit by the pandemic, and my role as Economic Development Minister, I was completely involved in that and finding solutions to keep the economy running, protect people's jobs, which I think the Assembly, previous government and this Assembly, because all approved by that, did relatively well. We knew then, sir, that the cost to our reserves would be significant, but that had to be taken. Prior to that, sir, I think going back, we started to see restructuring of the public sector with something called One Gov. And I think by the time we came out of the pandemic, it was clear that the One Gov work, sir, combined with the additional resources taken on to deal with the pandemic, had sort of stuck in place, and they sort of stayed there 22 through 23 and into 2024, and that's why we started to work to sort of reverse some of that position, sir. So I take full responsibility. We're all in the government, Deputy Moore and myself, from I think 2011 right up until the current time, and this Assembly and previous governments up until about 2016, 2017. Then we've allowed the public sector to grow, and I don't think we've realised it. But that's something we have to pull back on.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would like to correct the Deputy. I only served in a government with him from 2014 to 2018, a time when he had considerably different views to those he holds now, sir, on some key matters. Sir, does the Deputy regret his time as Deputy Chief Minister?
I'm not sure that's really connected to the question, is it?
Apologies, in terms of the impact that had on public expenditure.
Chief Minister.
Well, it's tempting, sir, to answer that with another question, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say I did not regret my time as Chief Minister. I regret the circumstances that we had to deal with. I've always felt very proud and privileged to do this role to the very best of my ability, and that I believe every member should always continue to do that, sir. So no, I do not regret it, sir, and I've always been proud to be a part of this Assembly. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Despite this government's efforts to bear down on costs, the government is having to retrospectively take another £50 million from the Social Security grant to bail out this year's budget. How confident is the Chief Minister that next year's budget will not also fall into deficit?
Chief Minister.
Well, I'm as confident as we all can be, sir, given the very careful forecasts that have been produced by Treasury and financial advisors for us. We look forward to receiving the fiscal policy panel's report on the proposed budget, sir. But this Assembly We'll try and forecast things as closely and accurate as we can, but must always be prepared to be versatile when we need to. We cannot guarantee economic growth at the levels we've had over previous years. We have to work hard for that, but I am confident, sir, that we will meet those targets.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister have even the tiniest hint of worry that he is relying on the grant to the Social Security Fund to bail out current expenditure for this current year?
Chief Minister.
Well, so I think I might, in this role, sir, I think life is a constant a worry and concern, but that is balanced by confidence and confidence in the way the Assembly and the government manage the island. I think I don't have any doubts about that, because I strongly believe, as does this government, it's the right thing to do. And the argument, I think, here is going to be about does this Assembly want to put £180 million of taxpayers' money into the reserve during the course of this budget and financial planning, or does it want to put more money in? And we've heard from the forecast we've had that the fund is in very good health. We could continue it to grow. It's got a 7 or 8 years reserve. We could build it to 9 or 10 years reserve if we wanted to. This government has determined that it would be in the public's best interests to put in about £184 million and then increase expenditure in areas that we really need to do, such as children's services, fire and rescue services, health, amongst other things. So that's it. Of course, it will be up to the Assembly to decide. Members might decide to bring amendments to the budget, and we would welcome amendments, constructive amendments, and look forward to discussing with members what they might like to do. But that's our position, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. The Fiscal Policy Panel has raised some concerns about the structural deficit in relation to public finances. Would the Chief Minister agree that using reserves and funds to balance the books may provide short-term relief, but actually doesn't address the underlying structural deficit issues? And can he explain what the government is doing to address the underlying structural deficit?
Chief Minister.
I would argue that we are not using reserves. It's being portrayed, quite wrongly, in my opinion, that we are plundering funds and taking money out. We're not taking money out. We're putting less money in. Okay, we're still putting significant amounts of money in, but we are putting less money in. And I think that we're also putting money as part of this, £240 million, I think, as part of this plan, into the strategic reserve. That's been conveniently forgotten. Okay, so this is a budget that puts nearly over £400 million during the plan into the reserves, and we think that is appropriate. We'd like to have more money to put into the reserves, but as I explained earlier in the answer, we're having to finally balance the books at the moment because we used all of our cyclical reserves up during the COVID period, and it's going to take longer to rebuild the economy and to regrow those reserves as was originally anticipated, sir.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 11, Deputy Bailiff will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. Further to written question 348 2025, will the Minister explain why the reporting requirements regarding the Community Use Monitoring Programme, as set out in the Planning Obligation Agreement and entered into as by Department, have not been enforced? What investigations, if any, have been undertaken into non-compliance with the POA? And what steps, if any, have been taken to ensure compliance with the POA going forward?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So, under Articles 25 and 40 of the Planning and Building Law, it is the Chief Officer who enters into planning obligations and also determines if there has been a breach of development controls and whether it's expedient to pursue action. I have therefore asked my Chief Officer within the Regulation Directorate for the facts into this case. The Directorate reports that it does not routinely monitor compliance with all obligations contained within POAs, other than monitoring financial contributions that are due to be paid at appropriate trigger points and distributing funds to appropriate projects when proof of delivery has been obtained. There's a general expectation, sir, that developers will comply with their contractual obligations as stipulated in the obligations registered with the Royal Court. In addition, in instances of non-compliance being brought to the attention of the Regulation Directorate, the Planning Compliance Team will investigate and consider, in association with law advisors, whether legal proceedings are appropriate to secure compliance with the terms of a POA. In this instance, sir, the compliance team have not previously registered an investigation regarding non-compliance with the Strive POA, and as such there has been no compliance investigation.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I appreciate that it is for the chief officers to investigate, but I've been asking questions about this now for some weeks, and I'm surprised that there has been no actions taken as yet. The planning law requires these to be enforced. What message is it sending to the public that planning obligation agreements entered into in the Royal Court can be so easily ignored?
Minister.
Sir, in this particular instance, the planning obligation agreement required a few things. The first thing it says requires the owner to undertake a monitoring programme and provide updates to the Chief Officer, Minister for Education and the Minister for Economic Development. And also, if the take-up use by the community drops below 75% of the offer, the owner must take steps to improve the take-up. In written question 348, which the Deputy refers to, it's clear that formal reports on the take-up have not been received. However, ad hoc updates are provided to the Department of the Economy. Now, whether that complies with undertaking a monitoring program and providing updates, I don't know. But further to that, it was also confirmed in that same written answer that of the 4,044 hours that had to be offered, 3,500 hours were taken up, which represented 86% of the take-up, which didn't fall below the 75, at which the owner should take steps to improve that, sir. So I can only add to that, sir, written question 381 on the same subject from the same deputy. The Education Minister said that Strive have an active and collaborative relationship with Jersey Sport and with Island schools, sports and community groups in relation to the use of the facility. I can only further add, if there's concerns about the way the community use is being delivered, we do have mechanisms, but to date no such concerns have been brought to my attention. However, if the Deputy is doing that, maybe the investigation should be or could be opened.
Minister, there was lots of crackling during your answer, and I was worrying who was distracting you. It was suggested it might be you distracting yourself. It might be a phone in your pocket. I don't know if you've got a phone in your pocket, but there is some sort of crackling during your answer. Perhaps you haven't got a phone.
I'm not aware of any crackling from my
well,
pocket,
it's
so it
not
might
you.
be my, nervousness and the paper rattling in the microphone.
You've got a theory of you?
So it sounds like the microphone itself, it's internal by the sounds of it, not,
Is it?
not electrical.
Oh, well.
Perhaps a swap, sir. Perhaps a swap. This one's not being used. Perhaps a swap.
Yes, we might give you a swap.
I'm happy to talk from this microphone if it
Yes.
sounds better, sir.
It does sound better, yes. Thank you very much, Minister. Yes, two questions, then we'll go to the final supplementary. Deputy Alex Curtis, then Deputy Chairman. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister highlights the numbers provided in written questions 348 and 380 and 381. But I think that the core that Deputy Renniff is trying to get to is the transparency. So given that the numbers provided represent a different perspective of the operating model, notably that whilst circa 3,500 time slots have been used, the take-up in 2024 was only 17,800 student hours against a predicted 107,000 student hours in the POA. This is all technical that the Minister will find later. The core question, sir, is will the Minister commit to ensuring that robust, thorough publication is there so those who may be community groups who may not know the full position of the operation can then obviously decide whether they need to pursue different use of the site? as in different use of the time slot hours.
Minister.
So I appreciate that some of the statistics may be a bit confusing, and certainly some of the information on the original written question was confusing to me, and I had to go back and ask for further clarification. It is important, I think, that everybody knows what's been written in the planning obligation agreement, and that everybody's very clear. I will go back to the department and ask for further clarification on that, and make sure that both sides completely understand what's required and whether that information has been received. As for other planning obligations, I think I need to be very careful about how much resource I commit to this, and I would stress obligations are registered in the Royal Court, and I think there's an obligation there on the applicant, the developer, to comply with those, rather than the department to make sure that every one of those POAs is enforced. The resources needed would be extreme.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. The POA on the Strive site also highlighted the expected subsidy provided to the different groups, with schools being 100%, sport being 89%, community groups being 93%, and the Jersey Rugby Club being 98%. Will he ensure that when he does engage with the operator for reporting, that the current levels of subsidy are reported within that, as well as the hours?
I will make sure that's done, sir. I only have a summary of the POA in front of me, and I wasn't aware of those particular percentages that the deputies quoted.
Deputy Jones.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister, in his answer to Deputy Curtis, reiterated that it is for the POAs are registered in the Royal Court, and it would therefore be up to those who feel that they are not being enforced to contact the department. Can I ask the Minister if there are any time limits or expiry provisions on the enforcement of POAs, or are they outstanding? So if there are POAs that maybe have been put in place 10, 20 years ago that are now not being complied to, would they be able to follow up with the department to enforce them?
Minister. Sir, as I stated in my original answer, we don't monitor these as such in the department. And as such, it's difficult to answer the Deputy's question, certainly going back that far. If the department aren't actively looking at every POA, how would they have the information to know that something hadn't been complied with? But I will certainly ask the question of officers and see what answer I get.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I think what my original question was more about the public in understanding that they are able, that if there is no time limit on POAs, they will be able to contact the department if those POAs that they understand, even though there is from some time ago, if they're not being complied to, they will be able to contact the department and they will be followed up.
Sorry, sir, I misunderstood the specifics of the Deputy's question. I think 20 years is a long way away, a long way in the past, and my understanding is there are time limits, and they're usually around 5 to 7 years.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so the interesting thing here is that no government department has chased up the planning obligation, despite the fact that the Education Department, the Economic Development Department and the Environment Department were all signatories to the planning obligation in the Royal Court. What steps will the Minister take to ensure that in the future these planning obligations are actually have some teeth, and the public can have an expectation that they will actually be some work taken to ensure that they're enforced?
Minister.
So, as I said originally, if there are concerns about the way the community use in this application or this POA is being given, I do have the legal mechanism to address those concerns. I said to date no such concerns have been brought to my attention, but I certainly will take the Deputy's question on board this morning, and from what I intimate from him, he has concerns and I will look into them.
Thank you, Minister. To ensure that we complete the questions, from now on, it'll only be one other member other than the questioner who has a chance to ask a supplementary question. Question 12, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on work undertaken to encourage pay transparency in job advertisements, as discussed during the gender pay gap hearing with the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel on 6th of May 2025.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. As I discussed with the scrutiny panel, I felt that we had an opportunity within our Jobs in Jersey website to encourage employers to not advertise jobs as negotiable with regard to pay and be more transparent when advertising. With that in mind, changes were made to the functionality and help text on the online vacancy form to encourage employers to publish salaries. Those changes were made in 2024. Unfortunately, though, those changes have only seen a marginal increase in greater pay transparency, and this is something that myself and Deputy Alves, as Assistant Chief Minister with responsibility for diversity and inclusion, take very seriously. So we do feel that we need to take more action in this respect and consider mandating that when advertising on Jobs in Jersey, there should be pay transparency.
Supplementary. Thank you. Question 13, Deputy Wilson will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Further to his comments following the scrutiny panel hearing on the 13th of October 2025, will the Minister expand on his reasoning for the introduction of the flat rate card for freight and explain how he considers it will improve competition?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, as I've said, because I have a number of similar questions this morning, so I will repeat myself.
You could keep your answers short if that's possible.
Absolutely,
in the time we have.
A flat rate card provides a safe and investable ferry service. This is my priority as Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, because the ferry service is the single most important part of the supply chain. The flat rate card puts competition into the correct part of the supply chain. Instead of the ferry service, the most important part of that supply chain, being beaten down on cost and price, competition will henceforth take place in the freight forwarding part of the supply chain. That freight forwarding part is 60% of the cost of the supply chain, or the cost of delivering goods to Jersey. It is appropriate that the
Porée were consulted on the potential market effects of the policy, and if so, what were the discussion outcomes? And can he explain how he will monitor whether the flat rate card delivers any measurable improvements in market competition, and how he would intend to do so?
Minister.
Sir, I don't believe Treasury were asked. I don't know. The JCRA were asked about the competition impacts of such and whether it would be an appropriate mechanism from a competition perspective. It is quite clear to me that the reaction that we are seeing at the moment suggests that the flat rate card is indeed having the appropriate effect, and that I know that there are importers to this island who have slashed their bills for freight to this island. And by importers, I mean major importers who bring in vast quantities of goods to this island, because they now see that they can operate the supply chain differently and in a competitive manner, so they are not beholden to the dominant supplier, keeping them over a barrel.
Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to the Minister for his answers, which have been very, very interesting. I get that he wants to protect the ferry service and argues that competition should be in the onward freight market. But the question is, can Jersey sustain competition, and has he taken advice on this? It's fine if it can, but an awful lot is riding in this, and that we should have competition in the freight forwarding market, and it would be good to have reassurance that it is possible, because if it isn't, does he agree that we would need to look at other solutions, such as regulation of the market?
Minister.
Effectively, sir, this flat rate card does regulate the market, sir, and it protects the ferry service in the way that it should. Can competition be sustained? Yes, I believe competition can be sustained in the absolutely enormous freight forwarding market, which is dominated, though, by one player. And we will see what investigation the JCRA come out with, but it will be potentially interesting. But it is, no question in my mind, quite possible for competition to take place in an area of Jersey's economy which is worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds. I cannot believe that it isn't possible for competition to take place there. But where it is not possible to take place is the beating down of the cost of providing ferry services to the point where new ferries could not be invested in, and I am fearful that safety was being reduced as a result of these cost pressures brought to bear by the reductions demanded by the players in the freight forwarding part of the market. So.
Supplementary.
So I guess the supplementary is, I take that he has a very passionate belief in this, but has he taken advice on the question of...
So there was advice given by members of the ministerial group that were looking at the freight, at the whole ferry contract, sir, and also from officers throughout. But I could not pinpoint one document or one piece, I think. It was a constant discussion, sir.
Deputy Wilson, final supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. Would the Minister please explain or confirm when he first heard the mention of the flat rate card? And can he also explain that if the policy is found to have reduced competition or indeed increased costs, would he consider reviewing the policy or indeed reversing it?
Minister.
Sir, it is far too early to tell whether there is going to be a negative impact on competition or a negative impact on cost. This is a contract which has been running for 6 months. But I do know that supermarkets will be seeking to protect their profits, and the dominant player in the supply chain will be seeking to protect their dominant place in the supply chain. What I will not have is the ferry service being the recipient of those costs and those desire to protect their current positions. So it is appropriate to have competition in our grocery market and other retail market. It is appropriate to have competition in the freight forwarding service part of the market. The idea that we are placing a freight forwarding service above the ferry service is quite, in my mind, disconcerting. That states members should seek to protect a freight forwarding service over the ferry service is very disconcerting to me. It is the ferry service that is vital to this island. I received a request for £40 million from the previous ferry service provider, and which said if we do not provide that £40 million, the ferry service will stop. This is proof that the ferry service had become uninvestable, and I am now concerned that it was also unsafe. And as a result, this was a result of the cost being beaten down onto that ferry service by the freight forwarders and their customers.
So may I ask a point of order? I think Deputy Wilson's actually going to do that.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I just would like to hear what the Minister's response was to when he first heard about the flat rate card, please.
Yes, in a sentence.
Absolutely. Sir, I don't know. This is a 3-year-long discussion, sir. I don't know.
Question 14, Deputy Joseph will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain whether the flat rate pricing requirement was part of the joint tender or only part of the single island tender? And if part of the joint tender, were both the GCRA and JCRA made aware of the pricing model, and were their views sought? And if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. Sir, as I have stated in the previous answer to Deputy Tadje this morning, the aspiration, as distinct from the word condition that was used in Deputy Tadje's question, for a flat rate card in any new concession agreement was set out in the joint Jersey-Guernsey invitation to tender and followed through in the Jersey-only invitation to tender. With regard to the GCRA, I don't know. That would be up to Guernsey to have decided whether or not to do that, sir.
Supplementary?
Sorry, I don't think my first one has been answered. The JCRA, my question was were they consulted, sir?
So I had answered that in a previous question this morning. That's why I didn't put it in there. So the JCRA was asked as to whether this would create problems from a competition perspective, sir.
Sorry, I'm specifically drilling onto this issue because
we haven't got very much time.
I assume this is a supplementary, sir.
Yes, it is a supplementary.
Oh, fine, okay.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Oh, good, that's all right then.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I am drilling into this because at a meeting where one other member and I think 2 other members were at the JCRA, we asked them whether or not they were consulted on the flat rate card, and they said, this was the full board, sir, they said no. They were not consulted, and I pushed them on whether or not they thought they should have been consulted and whether or not they thought it was under the legal requirements to do so. And there were rather sketchy answers, but it was clear that they did not provide. I am asking the Minister, did he receive written advice from the JCRA, who of course created this situation by requiring the sale of the Condor Logistics earlier? Did he get written advice from the JCRA in respect to the flat rate card? Sir.
So it's very interesting that the Deputy mentions Condor Logistics, because there's a story that I think has a few tales to tell, sir. But with regard to the JCRA, as I have said before, I understand that the officers asked the JCRA about whether such a provision such as flat rate card would present competition issues in terms of competition law issues. The JCRA did not provide an analysis of impact on competition, I don't believe so.
Question 15, Deputy Tadier will ask for the Minister for Infrastructure.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what plans, if any, he has to complete the pedestrian footpath between Mont de la Poulante and Rue de la Sargentée in the area adjacent to Le Fouguerel, and also provide the timeline to deliver this project?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, further to my response to Deputy Renoff's recent written question, 371, I confirm that I remain committed to delivering a continuous footway along Rue de la Sargentée and improving the adjacent railway walk crossing to enhance pedestrian safety and connectivity in the area. Significant work has been undertaken since 2021 to progress the scheme, including design, development and engagement with private landowners. However, delivery and programming of the works are contingent upon concluding land purchase agreements with neighbouring landowners, and negotiations are ongoing and final agreement remains to be reached. The Department continues to actively pursue a resolution with the landowners, and once this is reached, we'll be able to provide a timeline for construction. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
So I thank the Minister for his answer and previous answers to my St Brelade colleague. Could he confirm that if it appears that there is going to be any hold-up for whatever reason in the sale, and this has already been going on for 4 years, the sale of that land, would the Minister advise whether he has any backup plan to join the roads up, which may include actually no sale of private land, no purchase of private land by the states, but actually a St Mary's Village or St Martin's Village development style of road narrowing and virtual footpath, which may actually do the job just as well without needing to purchase any land?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the Deputy raises an interesting question. The difference between the areas cited by the Deputy and Rue Sargentée is the geometry. So there is a corner, sir, which wouldn't give oncoming traffic full sight. So we don't believe that a virtual footway is sustainable there. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renoff.
Yes, sir. In his answer to the written question, I posed, it was revealed that the most recent contacts with the landowners were in May for one landowner and June for the other, with the comment that the department is awaiting response. Back in June, we were looking forward to summer. Now the swallows have left, the leaves are falling, the clocks are about to go back. How long will the department wait for a response?
Minister.
So I asked that very question myself, sir, because whilst I'm happy for people to wait a few weeks, I was disappointed it had taken several months, sir. And I've asked that question myself. I'll wait the answer, sir, but hopefully soon. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. A supplementary, if I may pick up on Deputy Tadier's point about alternatives. It seems to me that there are potential alternatives that wouldn't involve a land purchase. They might involve more extensive works than have been done in other similar schemes that Deputy Tadier referred to. If the land purchase is proving really impossible, will the Minister undertake to review whether there might be other options that would be possible without a land purchase?
Minister.
So I'm happy to do that, sir, but I'm hopeful that we can reach agreement, sir. So part of the area was more complicated than first anticipated, sir, but I will go back and speak to officers about alternatives and also chase up for the times. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Final supplementary.
Yes, sir. So first of all, I would say it's not a corner at all. There is a slight bend and that actually an alternative solution could be found whereby traffic was held up. I asked the Minister whether he would be open to both that possibility as an alternative to purchasing private land, and also whether he would be willing to meet with representatives from the area so that we could, at a site visit in the very near future, to see what the options might be.
Minister.
Sir, I'm more than happy to meet St Saviour's, St Bullard's, any other districts to talk about road safety initiatives and try and get positive and constructive suggestions. So I have to rely on the professional advice I'm given. Often I will say to officers that I believe this will work or that will work, so but I have to rely on the professional advice I have from professional road traffic engineers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 16, Deputy Ward will put to the same Minister. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide estimated total cost of purchasing the Jersey Gas site from Adium Homes, building the proposed new town primary school on the site, demolishing Springfield School and Labar Centre, and creating pocket parks on these sites, and delivering the proposed North of St Helier Youth Centre, and also provide the timescale for the delivery of these capital projects?
Minister. In 90 seconds.
Thank you, sir. I was waiting for another answer. Sir, thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, to ensure the purchase can proceed without further delay, the formal transfer of the Jersey Gas site from Adium Homes, a price has been agreed for a nominal sum of £1. To compensate Adium Homes, the draft budget proposes an agreed reduction of £1.5 million per year to the return Adium pays to government, lasting 10 years. A number of factors, both known and unknown, can influence accurate predictions of future costs, and these must accordingly caveat this answer. There is currently a sum of £15.5 million identified in the latter years of the draft budget for new schools and educational developments, which is intended to provide funding to commence provision of a much-needed, modern, town-based primary school at Gas Place. The cost of demolition of the buildings referenced is currently in the order of £15 per square foot. However, that sum will heavily be influenced by additional factors such as site access, the presence or not of hazardous materials, waste management and disposal, and logistics. The cost of the new pocket parks is also a subjective assessment and will depend on the exact nature of the project, and I'd expect extensive stakeholder engagement with the people that live nearby. The proposed cost of the North of St Helier Youth Centre is on record in the draft budget on page 56 at a total of £16.13 million. I would emphasise that this price also includes provision of a new YES Centre and is not just limited to a youth centre. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Has any consideration been given to using the Jersey Gas showroom for the provision of a much more affordable and much needed St Helier Youth Centre, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Yes, sir. So I believe there was actually a debate in this Assembly, sir, about the use of the gas site, sir. And so that debate took place after discussions with officers, sir. We don't currently own the site, sir, so we're currently not able to use it. Sir, the debate about the youth centre, I believe, has been long exhausted, sir, and I support the decision of government and this Assembly to continue with those plans. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Joseph.
Based upon what the Minister explained in terms of ifs and buts and maybes of future budgets, would he be prepared to give a date when he would expect this new primary school to actually be opened? What year is it?
Minister.
Sir, it's 2025, sir. That's the year it is. So in terms of the...
Is it opening the new school on the gasworks site? I don't think it could be possible, sir.
So in terms of the opening for the town school, so there's a lot of work to be done in terms of detailed design, etc. So I visited the town schools personally, sir, to see the challenges those schools have got, and we have to complete this building as soon as possible, sir. I'm not sure of the exact date, sir, but I would hope it would be around 28, 29. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Is he saying that there is going to be budgetary provision for the school opening of that time primary school by 2029? Is he going to really restate that for certain?
Minister.
So that will be a decision taken by this Assembly, sir, but I believe that if this Assembly supports the provision of modern facilities for our young people, sir, for our teachers, for the parents of those people, sir, then we have to make the provision within our capital funding in the soonest we can do that. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy War. So the final question is question 17, which Deputy Jern will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Jern.
Thank you, sir. Further to the potential allocation of a quota for fishing of Atlantic bluefin tuna, will the Minister advise what further actions, if any, will be required in order to maximise the value of any such quota and how this work will be funded?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, should a commercial quota for Atlantic bluefin tuna be allocated to Jersey or to Jersey-registered vessels, this opportunity will be managed with the utmost responsibility and care. A strict licensing regime will be implemented, fully aligned with ICAT regulations, ICAT being the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna. And there will be vessel-specific authorisations required. A rigorous application process will ensure that only those vessels which are properly equipped and professionally prepared will be permitted to participate in this fishery. This approach is designed to uphold the highest standards of sustainability, traceability, and industry best practice, ensuring that any quota allocated to Jersey is not only respected, but also maximised in value for our economy. I would expect, sir, as regards funding, that licence application process would be business as usual, funded in-house, but I accept that there will be costs to fishing boats to convert to fish for this very specialised catch, and that the funding for that could be discussed at the time, potentially using the Marine Support Scheme. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, and I thank the Minister for his answers. And just to confirm, if the Minister could say that, reiterate whether to maximise the value of any such quota, it is about the vessel itself that needs to be equipped and there's nothing else that needs to be done, or are there other issues like facilities on land or marketing that needs to be supported to ensure that the value is maximised, or will the Minister just be focusing on vessel specifications?
Sir, to support what I said before, my officers are looking to introduce management measures that prioritise the retention of tuna landings within the local market. By staggering landings throughout the season, we can avoid market saturation and protect the value of this premium product. Our fishing industry and local merchants will need to adapt to the specific requirements of the species, including its seasonality and its handling needs. But looking ahead, should this fishery become established, we will also explore the development of an individual fish tagging scheme which could enhance traceability and transparency, allowing each fish to be tracked from the sea to the plate. When paired with information such as the vessel of origin and location of capture, this system has the potential to significantly increase market value. But I take the Deputy's sentiments on board, sir. There may be, and I say may, I'm not sure of this, there may be some requirements on the quayside. It's my understanding at the moment that we do have the facilities to process these fish as they would need to be required.
Comment Harbison Saviour.
Thank you, sir. Very briefly, sir. This could be a huge bonus to our long-suffering fishing industry, sir. My question is, are the blue tuna in sufficient numbers for them to be taken, and will it be time barred, and are our French counterparts taking tuna already? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I can assure the Constable that there are sufficient numbers. The whole reason for having ICAT is that all the bluefin tuna, especially in the North Atlantic, are monitored, and the amount of the species swimming around Channel Islands water has, I'm sure, seen by some people on social media, a huge explosion in numbers, not only here but off the southwest coast of England. And I'm assured the numbers are there, they're very sustainable. We will take a very small amount. Let's be assured if we do get some quota, it's not going to be a large amount of quota, and we will work very hard to make sure that small number of fish are maximised financially by staggering the landings and making sure we don't saturate the market.
Supplementary? Final supplementary, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. And I just would like to maybe ask the Minister to reiterate that around the funding needed to support the fishing industry to adapt to be vessels, and also the fish tagging scheme that the Minister spoke about, that this would be able to be funded under business as usual, or there would be additional funding that needs to be found, and where would this come in?
Minister.
So the number of boats which would be allowed to do this may well be very small. The quota will be small, so the number of vessels fishing will be small. I expect that licence application process and awarding to be done as business as usual and in-house. But when it comes to the requirements on the fishing boats, I think there will be several thousands of pounds that will be needed to be spent on boats in order to convert them, in order to land these fish carefully, so that the meat doesn't spoil. I'm sure there's also going to be requirements on deck to make sure the meat is treated properly between the time of being caught and being landed. We do now benefit from the Marine Support Scheme, which is a fund of money there to support fishermen, and they've been able to access that recently. And I'm sure when we get to next year, if we get a quota and if we manage to secure enough quota to establish a fishery, that there will be some demands on that fund, and I would very much hope that we could use the Marine Support Scheme to help fishermen to convert their boats.
Thank you, Minister. We now move on to questions to ministers without notice, and the first period of questions are questions directed to the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. And the first question is from Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the recently lodged draft marriage and civil partnership dissolution and separation law, will the Minister advise whether consideration has been given to include specific provisions to recognise and protect against coercive or controlling behaviour within divorce or separation proceedings?
Minister.
So, in relation to the new legislation, which I welcome, this means that there is no longer any issue in relation to people getting divorced. Obviously, if there is a matter of coercive behaviour, then this, in the normal way, can still be reported to the States of Jersey Police, and this matter would be dealt with accordingly.
Supplementary.
Yes, thanks, sir. Has the Minister taken advice from frontline services and key stakeholders on how coercive control may manifest during financial negotiations or child arrangements in divorce cases?
Minister.
I haven't taken specific advice, sir, in relation to this matter. However, I'm fully aligned to the fact that these matters do occur, and as the members will be aware, there is ongoing work in relation to reviews of our certain courts.
Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. Further to the State of Jersey Prison Service Annual Report, R123, the most pressure on the prison was on the Vulnerable Prisoners Accommodation Unit, the VPU, which has a maximum capacity of 59 prisoners. But the average number of prisoners requiring this facility was 8% higher than 2023 and 15% higher than 2022. What action is the Minister taking to extend the capacity of the VPU? Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, as the Deputy alludes, this is an ongoing matter for the States of Jersey Prison Service. And we can all accept that we have a finite facility which cares for all of the categories of prisoners on the island. The prison has and regularly does assess the vulnerable prisoners unit, and they constantly change the facilities within the prison so that we can increase the capacity. Moving forward, sir, there will be a need, obviously, to be able to provide more facilities within the prison, and that will be something that will move forward in relation to capital projects.
Supplementary, Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. With the average prison population increasing from 138 in 2023 to 155 in 2024, what pressures will be put on the VPU if is there a need for an extension to the prison population and an actual increase in the size of the prison? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So I thank the Deputy for the question. In relation to the VPU, and I think people would recognise that the nature of the offending as to why people are within the prison is in relation to prison sentences which are significantly getting longer. So we will need to take this into consideration, as I said, in particular in relation to the vulnerable persons unit. I do think that there is going to need to be a facility increase in relation to the prison at Lemoy, and that will need to be looked at in the capital budget I would suggest, sir, in the next couple of years.
Deputy Bailiff.
So if one accepts the premise that freedom of speech includes freedom to offend and upset some people, does the Minister agree that any legislation to outlaw hate speech should be very carefully and tightly drafted?
Minister.
Sir, I would 110% agree with the Deputy in relation to the legislation in relation to hate crime, and I think when it is drafted we need to take all of these matters into consideration and ensure that we do not impede on people's ability for freedom of speech, but also that we do not allow people to commit crimes either.
Supplementary?
Would the Minister, I thank the Minister for that, would the Minister agree that the States of Jersey Police should be encouraged to follow the example of the Metropolitan Police in London in not investigating so-called non-crime hate speech?
Minister.
So I do, obviously I won't actually give an answer to something that really is not within my remit. It is really in the remit of the Chief of Police. My role is not to interfere with operational matters. However, I think moving forward, I'm sure that that will be something that the Chief of Police will be in full discussions with his counterparts in the UK.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister met with the police chief regarding their recording of crimes motivated by hatred, as requested in previous sittings?
Minister.
Sir, I believe in relation to the matter, I believe that the States of Jersey Police are recording these matters, and I talk regularly with the States of Jersey Police, and that information was provided to me. I do not recall having a specific conversation.
Supplementary, Deputy?
Would the Minister commit to having this conversation with the police chief, specifically looking at the characteristics that are recorded by the police and expanding them to make sure they cover a wider range of characteristics that Jersey residents might hold?
Minister.
Yes, sir, I will do that. As I said, we've certainly had a discussion about meeting with other groups in relation to this topic. We just haven't actually organised that meeting.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister let us know when the new shooting range up at Crabbe will be available for non-police shooters?
Minister.
Sir, I actually don't know the answer to that question. The facility has now obviously been opened, sir, and I will check that question for the Deputy.
Supplementary?
I thank the Minister for taking the time to find out the answer. Could she also find out whether it will be used for income generation for the States of Jersey Police?
Minister.
That's an interesting question, and that might actually be worthwhile doing. I don't think it's actually been an income generating previously, but I think if there's an opportunity, sir, then it would be a good one.
Any other questions for this Minister? Yes, Connaught St Mary.
Following on to the last question, I hope that before paying any income to states, account will be taken of the need for appropriate rates to be discharged to the parish.
Absolutely, sir.
No supplementary there, I don't think. Deputy Bailiff.
Yes, so I wonder if, given recent court cases, the Minister has had cause to reassess whether the matter of corporate manslaughter should not be a higher priority for the government than it currently is.
Minister.
Sir, I'd like to reiterate that it's not a high priority in relation to corporate manslaughter. The issue with the situation that we are in is actually the fact that we have a number piece of legislation that is going through in relation to the violence against women and girls, which is where our drafting legislators are committed. In relation to the corporate manslaughter law, that awaits the possibility of going to the drafters. However, at this stage, there's no capacity. What will need to be looked at, of course, is, sir, when we go into PERDA and how the arrangements for the non-political legislative work will be done.
Supplementary.
Yes, so can the Minister clarify exactly what state we are at with this? Is there a draft law ready to go that is simply waiting for a once-over from the law drafters, or is the law yet to be drafted in any form?
Minister.
Sir, in answer to that, the law is ready to go pretty much to the drafters. It's not just a once-over though, sir. Let's be quite specific here. A law drafter is somebody that's a lawyer and takes 5 years to qualify as a law drafter. So I think we need to get this into perspective. It's not here's a piece of legislation, please write it up. It is a complicated job to do.
Supplementary. Yes, it was. Sorry, I was... Well, I thought you might want to ask more questions. Any further questions for this Minister before we conclude this session? No? All right. In that case, we move on to the second period of questions without notice for the Minister for Social Security. And the first question is from Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. So, returning to the state's grant to the Social Security Fund, the letter from the actuaries regarding the reduction of the state's grant is based on an instruction from the Minister to increase the expected rate of return by 1%. Why did she not ask for projections based on the current rate of return, which would have allowed like-for-like comparisons to be made with previous projections?
Minister.
Sir, the advice given to me was that the 1% was a sensible rate of return. As I said previously, we asked for a number of scenarios, and I took the advice given to me by both Treasury officials and my own officials.
Supplementary.
Thank you. The graphs in the letter from the actuaries make clear that by far the most significant factor in reducing the impact of the reduction of the grant is the increase in the projected rate of return on investment. Without this, the government's case falls apart. Given that the government has not taken up the actuaries' offer to assess whether the changed investment return is wise, what confidence can the public have that the Minister hasn't just made an assumption that is politically convenient?
Minister.
Sir, as I said earlier, there are already plans to instruct the actuaries to undertake further reviews in relation to the ongoing input into the Social Security Fund. What is drafted in the document and the letter relates to an ongoing reduction to the state's grant. That is not currently what is proposed or planned. The reason why I asked for that information was to inform any future decisions of this Assembly.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. What action will the Minister undertake to investigate options to better support the limited number of households where parents of pension age are looking after adult children with additional needs and who are not entitled to home carers allowance?
Minister.
I thank the Deputy for her question, and I also thank the Deputy for the time that she gave me a few weeks ago to look, I think collaboration is the right word here, collaboratively at how we can provide more support for families who are indeed caring for their adult children. I know that this is a matter that does cause concern to a number of people. People want to see that carers are valued and that we value the role that carers are playing. I don't think necessarily the solution to that would be changing the rules specifically in relation to home carers allowance. I think what we do need to look at is our benefit system as a whole in relation to those cases. But I will undertake to work collaboratively with the Deputy to find a solution.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister very much for her very positive reply. Will the Minister give her views on personal independence payments and whether she would be prepared to research how they could be introduced into Jersey to give claimants more choice of how their benefit is spent?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I do believe that the claimants themselves, the people who are being cared for, do deserve to have choice around their circumstances and their own care. So that is something that I would look at. I am, of course, mindful of where we are in relation to the term of office and the end of the term of office. So I couldn't promise to take that particular action before the end of the term of office, but I will, of course, stick to what I have committed to, which is to work with the Deputy to look at what we can do in the short term.
Deputy Barbara Ward.
Thank you, sir. Slightly move on from the previous question. There are over 5,000 informal carers. Will the Minister give serious consideration in the introduction and provision of a carer's allowance in addition to people who are receiving an old age pension, by either changing the Social Security law, which prevents two benefits being paid, or by moving the carer's allowance to come under and be paid from the long-term care fund? If not, why not?
So I think there might be many possible solutions to the issues that have been raised. The two solutions as proposed by the Deputy may not be the correct ones. I believe that policy on the run is policy underdone, and I won't undertake to take policy decisions here in this chamber. But I do want to give the Deputy assurance that I do take the needs of carers very seriously, and I will, of course, continue conversations with her and any other Deputy that is concerned around this area.
Supplementary.
It's just to say thank you for the Minister's assurance that we will meet up and have further discussions on that, and I thank the Minister. Thank you.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe the current system, which means that some islanders in their 60s who have paid full social security contributions because they started work perhaps at a young age, but are not yet at pensionable age, and therefore means that they have to continue overpaying or face taking a reduced pension if they take it early? Does she believe that that current system is fair? And if not, what is she doing to address the issue?
Minister.
Thank you, Sarah. And as I hope the Deputy would be aware, due to our discussions in scrutiny, it is something that does cause me concern, and I am concerned around fairness. So I did undertake to ask officers to look at what kind of flexibility we may be able to offer people as they have reached the point at which they have paid in their full year's worth of contributions. As the Deputy is aware, because she sits on the scrutiny panel that scrutinises me, I have other priorities that have picked that one to the post, but it's very much on the list of things to work through.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir, and I'm grateful to the Minister for that response. Given the conversations that are currently ongoing about the Social Security Fund and claims of it being overfunded, and perhaps we should be looking at the model and we're using some of the money on other things, would now not be the perfect time to be addressing this issue? Actually, if we're saying that there's too much money going into that fund or it's currently got a surplus, to actually be saying to these islanders, yes, we recognise this is really unfair, and some are, you know, facing overpaying by £16,500 as an example. Is now not the perfect time to be addressing this?
Minister.
I think now is the perfect time for us to assess what we expect out of the fund and what we anticipate putting into it, which is why we are undertaking that additional work with the actuaries in the coming months so that we can address exactly these kinds of questions. I would take the opportunity to remind the Deputy that even if people who have their full years of contributions do continue paying, it does give them access to the working age benefits that come from the Social Security Fund.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. With regard to the proposals for the Social Security grant in this year's budget, could the Deputy provide us with a description of the evidence that was provided to her upon which she amended the assumptions for income growth through investments of 1%?
Minister.
So the evidence was provided by our investment specialists in Treasury and the advisors that advised me. I'm not an investment specialist, so I undertook to take that advice. Of course, if deputies wish me to gain more advice, to give them more assurance about the decisions that they are going to take in December when we discuss the budget, I'm more than happy to do so.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I think that might be a sensible option, particularly a negative investment growth might assist members.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. With regards to the minimum wage offset for accommodation, will the Minister share if she is aware as to whether the full offset can be claimed in instances where staff share a single bedroom, and if not, will she investigate the offset policy in regard to shared rooms and share her findings with members in short order?
Minister.
So yes, the use of offsets and the appropriate use of offsets is something that is of concern to me. I am somewhat limited in the information that I have or can get in relation to offsets. This also came up as a topic within the recent scrutiny hearing around migrant workers, and I think myself and the Environment Minister and the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs expressed, during that meeting the willingness to work together collaboratively. I will continue to work together collaboratively. Again, I wish to reiterate the point that I made in that hearing, that if anybody is concerned around the treatment of workers and their accommodation standards, the right thing to do is report that to the correct authorities so that the correct action can be taken.
Supplementary.
As part of the annual review into the offset and the minimum wage, will she consider what statutory mechanisms she may need to implement to collect that data from any employer who uses an offset as part of their arrangements with staff?
So that was something that I did consider as well last year when I set the offset rate. A lot of the statutory provision in relation to quality of accommodation, of course, rests with the Minister for Environment rather than myself. So I think what I can do here in the Chamber today is again further commit to working with other ministers to assure people that the right quality standards and that people are being looked after. But again, there is an incumbence on people that if they are aware of standards not being met, of unsafe living conditions, they really do need to report that to the authorities so that the correct approach can be taken.
Thank you. Any further questions for this Minister? Another one from Deputy Bailiff.
Yes, moving on to a totally different subject, the Health Insurance Fund, that's one of the other state's funds. Can the Minister state, given that this is probably the most precarious of the funds that are currently under management, if you like, what work is being done to determine the sustainability of the current funding commitments?
Minister.
Sarah, in addition to the work that is being led by the Health Minister in relation to the whole landscape of health funding, I'm also conscious that we also have the Comptroller and Auditor General's team currently doing an audit of the Health Insurance Fund, which is something that I will look forward to receiving. I think it's important to remember there's been a lot of dialogue about expenditure on the Health Insurance Fund. These things are important to spend money on. They're things like our vaccination services, our pharmaceutical services, and providing affordable GP access. So I would encourage members to be mindful of that when they talk about expenditure coming out of the Health Insurance Fund.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, very mindful of that, and which is why the question of sustainability is so important. If these things are important, they have to be important going forward, not just for the short term. Does it concern the Minister at all that the health fund is in, the health insurance fund is in the state it is in, or is she entirely relaxed?
Minister.
Sarah, of course I'm concerned. I am concerned that we have enough money into the future to fund affordable access to GP visits. I'm concerned that we have enough money to put towards our vaccination programmes and of course our other public health programmes that may be run by the health team. And I'm concerned that we are able to provide for our pharmaceutical benefits as well. But we also need to see that in the round of health funding as a whole and the whole of government budgets. And as I have said in Scrutiny and committed to do so, I'm committed to working collaboratively with ministers to that effect and also with States Assembly members so that we can make sure that we've got the right provisions in place for the future.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Given the revenue in 2024 was lower than the assumption, could the Minister describe how she has considered the potential impact that it will have on a future government if that trend continues?
Minister.
So I'm not sure which revenue the Deputy is referring to.
Yes, could you clarify that?
Overall revenue, sir, lower than assumption. And the question I should finalise is what impact on the ability of a future government to make a grant to the Social Security Fund.
Minister.
So I'm looking at the Treasury Minister because I think that would probably be a question for her. But I think revenues and money coming into the state's budgets is something that we should all be concerned about. And like I said, I think it will be a matter for public debate as we near the election.
So that does not really answer the question. This is a matter of her responsibility and the assumptions that she is making for a proposal that is being brought to this Assembly.
Yes, so unfortunately the period for questions for this Minister has now come to an end. As in Griffia, we've reached the end of that 15 minutes, yes. So we now move on to the final
Did we get the extra from the other Minister, sir?
Sorry?
Did we get the extra from the other Minister?
That goes to the Chief Minister, automatically. It doesn't go to anyone else. And luckily, the fortunate Chief Minister gets the extra time. So are there any questions for the Chief Minister? Yes, the first question is from Deputy Brennan.
Thank you, sir. Returning to the Social Security Fund, I do want to make clear that I'm not against the budget proposals in principle, but we do need to know the basis of the government's decisions. So can I ask, why did the government not start with the question, how much can the Social Security Fund afford to lose in contributions, rather than how much it needs to take to balance the books?
All of that information and all of those would have been considered by the officials and the Treasury officials very carefully, who produced lots of different forecasts of how the fund might look if it reacted in certain ways. And I think we've taken a careful and prudent approach to forecasting the future of the fund. You can never forecast things accurately, but I think we've got a good track record of being relatively close over previous years. We do live in more uncertain economic times, so it is getting harder. But what we do know is there is significant reserves, and it's something we will keep under review, and we look forward to the full actuarial review, which will happen next year, which will give us further guidance on how the Assembly might decide to supplement it in the future.
Supplementary?
So let me come at it from a different angle. The budget includes funding commitments that extend into the future on health, childcare, etc. But the chief funding mechanism in the budget, reducing contributions to the Social Security Fund, is only available for 4 years. That means, as the Social Security Minister told Scrutiny, it will be for the next Assembly to work out how to deal with the funding gap. Why does the Chief Minister think it is appropriate to hand the problem over to the next Assembly?
Chief Minister.
I think if one was to go back and analyse all of the previous budgets and government plans and 3-year plans and 4-year plans over the last 20 years, you find they changed significantly. We have missed you, Deputy Bailiff, but you'll find you rather distracting. Can you let me finish, please? Over the previous so we've changed significantly year on year the budgets depending on circumstances and forecasts, and they change all the time. So the short answer is we cannot guarantee anything in the 4-year plan because we can only make our best estimates, and those have always been generally good, sir. So I'm not quite sure how else. I mean, Deputy Renner keeps coming at this from lots of different angles, and we keep giving the same answer. So I'm not sure what we can do, say, other than this government has very carefully considered that it would be in the best interest of the taxpayer to take the action we are proposing.
Deputy Joseph.
I wonder if I could ask the Chief Minister whether or not he understands and accepts the difference between the long-term care funding arrangements, which are entirely contributors from working people and non-working people, and on contrast, the Social Security scheme, which was in its essence a third, a contribution from the employer, from the employee, and from the public purse. And when he says that he has decided, or the government has decided, because of that third that comes from government, that they're going to reduce it, does he not feel and understand why the contributors also feel as though with their third responsibilities, they also should be consulted about whether or not? And would he accept that some of them say, well, why aren't we having a holiday from our contributions if the fund is doing? Does he understand the difference between the contributing of a taxation issue versus social security, which is three-part, not just government?
Chief Minister.
Yes, I do understand the difference. I do. I'm not sure I fully understood the relation in the question, but I do understand the difference, yes.
Supplementary?
So it follows then, if he understands that the contributors are three people, or three types of people, employees, employers, and the state, then does he not think it's right to ask the employees or the employers what they would do in the event of what is clearly a surplus of funds taken by a series of proper decisions in the past about budgets?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I think we have to do what is practical. And as the Social Security mentioned in her previous question, we need to introduce some generational sort of equity into what's going on. The formula for supplementing the Social Security Fund was based on different reserve fund, beg your pardon, we mustn't get the Social Security Fund and the reserve fund mixed up, was predicated upon a different set of population forecasts and future planning. That needs to be revised, sir. As a result of that, we have a reserve that's in a very, very strong position. And I have to repeat myself, we don't believe it would be in the interests of the public, including all the contributors to the fund, those who have contributed and those who are now benefiting from the fund. I think it would be in their best interest to follow the course of action we are proposing in the budget, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the Chief Minister about the Roadworks and Events Law. In particular, the announcement that a permanent licence scheme for roadworks cards will be in place from January 2026. Has the Chief Minister had any discussions with the Minister for Infrastructure about the rollout of this new scheme? And if so, were the topics of the impact on business or bureaucracy discussed?
Chief Minister.
No, sir, but I believe I'm due to get a briefing.
Yes, please. Given that the Chief Minister hasn't been briefed on this, and given that the apparent training being provided will require the costs of the region of hundreds of pounds per individual on an open course, will the Chief Minister consider thoroughly, when he's briefed, whether any deferment is needed on the implementation to ensure the government is not overreaching or overly bureaucratic in its regulation?
The short answer to that is yes, sir.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. I wonder if the Chief Minister can advise whether his government is still on track to bring the same-sex parental rights legislation into force next month, please.
Chief Minister.
I'd have to, I'm looking at the Children's Minister, he's nodding his head, sir, so I think there has to be a yes. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy.
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Given the feedback that is being given from the business community at the moment, what consideration has the Chief Minister given to future revenue declining on assumptions versus continuing on the current trend?
Chief Minister.
It's a deputy relating to general revenue, overall revenue. I'm not sure I'm correlating that to in relation to businesses, sir. Could you just try and explain that a little more?
Could you be more specific about what you see declining?
Yes, sir. One could easily assume that a decline in business confidence and a decline in business activity will equal a decline in revenue through income tax, corporation tax, and even the duties that the government collects.
Well, as a deputy, sir, no, sir, we have limited corporation tax. And that's why we're focusing on an important piece of work, primarily to look at the competitiveness of the financial services sector. They pay the vast majority of corporation tax, and we hear that confidence is steady and beginning to build again in that sector, sir. The other businesses, I think, I'm trying to recall the latest business confident survey, but we were seeing confidence building in more areas, again, with the exception of areas like the hospitality of the Economic Development Minister is working more closely with. So I don't see a long-standing confidence crisis from business. I see confidence start to rebuild, sir, but it is quite fickle at the moment based on geopolitical circumstances.
Supplementary. Are there any further questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister, in answer to an earlier question today, said that his government had done more on the cost of living than any other government. What evidence does he have that the measures taken by his government have made life better for islanders?
Chief Minister.
I'm not sure that we made a claim that we have made life better for all islanders. I hope we've made life better for some islanders with the introduction of some policies that I've named earlier, extension of childcare, access to homes, financial support for purchasing houses, reduction in GP fees. So I was referring to what we'd introduced, the measures we'd introduced to help islanders with the cost of living, which I hope have benefited a good proportion of islanders, but certainly I'm sure I didn't make the claim we've benefited all islanders, sir. But I am confident that we've introduced significant measures, financial support measures to help not just Middle Jersey, but all islanders, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I'll resist asking if the Chief Minister will be authorising an advertorial on the matter in the JEP. But without measurements of impact and being able to point to what you're trying to achieve with cost of living measures, then how can the Chief Minister make such a claim that his government has done more on the cost of living than any other government?
I was going to resist mentioning, sir, that Deputy War, who asked me the question, commissioned an advertising campaign for the Better Home Service in the government that Deputy Stevenson served in, sir. That was a large campaign with Google Ads,
Do you want to focus on the question, Chief Minister?
And
Do you want to focus on the question, Chief Minister?
Okay. What was the question? Could the Deputy just repeat the question, sir?
Yeah.
With pleasure, sir. And to get back to the serious point here that I think we're all trying to get to, actually, that when it was regarding when you're bringing in measures to tackle the cost of living without measurements of impact in place and being able to tell us about those, how can the Chief Minister make the claim that his government has done more on the cost of living than any other?
I think, sir, that is a very good point. But with the measures we've introduced, such as the completion of the rollout of school lunches, nursery care, extension of nursery care provision, the First Step scheme for housing, as an example, we can see that the results are in numbers. We can see the numbers to those quite clearly. And that's how we can measure. There are some areas I think with more general policies that are harder to focus on, sir. But generally with those, of course, we do rely on the very good work of the statistics unit as well to guide us.
Deputy Joseph.
I'm not sure, respectfully, sir, that the Chief Minister answered my earlier question about the contribution, the different types of contributor for the Social Security scheme. It is an important point because it's raised by islanders, and I'm not sure, does the Chief Minister understand, has he been given, and I say this with the greatest respect, has he been given a background briefing and with his ministers about what the essence of Social Security was, which was this notion that it was a third. And therefore the idea in the public's mind, would he accept that the idea in the public's mind is that they are almost jointly contributors into the fund? And therefore that's why many members in the past and ongoing, Deputy Bailiff, Deputy Barbara Ward, etc., have all focused on this issue of, well, we've got a say in this as well, because we're contributing. Now, does he understand that? And I say that most respectfully, having been doing lots of budgets with him as a minister, and I'm not going to make any snide comments at all.
No, thank you, sir. That is a good question. I appreciate the question. But since the principles, we do understand the principles. Going back some time, the principles of a third. But that is when the Social Security Fund was more focused. The benefits paid out of the Social Security Fund now are far greater, far broader than have been for some time. So, I mean, the principles have to change with the actual fund, what it does now. And that's the same with the reserve fund. So the Social Security Fund is paying out a broad range of benefits. That's the situation we find ourselves in. So we are having to amend the policies appropriately.
Supplementary?
I say this having been not in the Assembly for the last last few weeks, and I wish to remain respectful to ministers because I know how difficult it is. But does the Chief Minister, with the benefit of hindsight and knowledge of the very torturous discussions happened over numerous budgets about the health insurance fund, does he see the risks of now, in the public's eye, there being effectively a alternative use class of monies from the Social Security Fund arising, which could be, one would not want to have to relive the HIF experience. I'm sure the Chief Minister would understand that, misunderstanding on both sides. But would he commit to ensuring that there is a greater understanding of what the different contributors of the Social Security Fund, and that their views matter? Because it's all very well saying that other things are being used, but at the end of the day, money is there because of three different parties, and that's a moral obligation if it is not a legal one.
Chief Minister.
No, I think we do fully understand that. And we've had a series of very in-depth briefings, and we wouldn't do anything, that this government wouldn't do anything and wouldn't ask the Assembly to do anything if we felt it risked any aspect of the Social Security Fund, the Social Security Reserve Fund. So I'm not quite sure what else I can add to that, sir. We've found ourselves repeating ourselves again and again and again on this issue. So no, I do understand the rationale of what Deputy Bailiff is asking, and I do not think there is a risk in any way to the future of the reserve fund by the measures being proposed now, sir.
So I'm hating to raise your point of order, but I think you may be, as presiding officer, be aware that I'm asking a question that doesn't appear to be being answered. Not on purpose, but I genuinely think maybe it's a form of words. I'm talking about the different classes of contributions, sir. And the Chief Minister's talking about everything else.
Well, he's given his answer.
Answer, sir, to my question.
Deputy Alex Curtis, the next person to speak, unless someone wants to propose the adjournment. I'm not suggesting he should, but is your light on for that purpose? No.
Just if time to ask a question, sir.
Yes, thank you. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And one of the common strategic priorities is reduce red tape, enhance opportunities for business and strengthen Jersey's international reputation. So can the Chief Minister advise what is the most recent policy decision he has delivered or overseen by other ministers that tangibly reduce an area of red tape to business?
I'll have to come back to the Deputy with that, so I haven't been working on that. There is some work going on by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, so I'll come back with the latest progress on that area.
Supplementary.
Thank you. If the Minister doesn't have anything to hand, can you advise whether the Council of Ministers have a clear understanding or record of what areas of red tape they will reduce before the election? And if not, will he then report whether they are happy with the current actual or perceived levels of, quote, red tape?
Chief Minister.
Absolutely, sir. Council of Ministers will be getting a briefing on that. But I would add that I'm still not content that we've made enough progress in reducing regulation and red tape, and we need to go a lot further. One particular area that I'm concerned about is planning. For example, I'm no disrespect to the Minister or the Chair of the Planning Committee, but that is where we seem to get the most noise and the most concern from members of the public. So we have made progress, but not enough in my opinion, sir, and that's something we need to double down on.
Deputy Bailiff.
I make no apology for pursuing the matter of the reduction in the state's grant, because up until a few years ago, government contributions were sacrosanct. The Chief Minister's budget depends entirely on the reduction in the grant. When did it become apparent to the government that this would be the case?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, our budget is not completely dependent on the grant. It's dependent on what the States Assembly agree. If they decide they want to put more money into the grant, they can choose what services or what areas they'd like to reduce to do that. It's a proposal that can be amended, so that's not correct that we are completely reliant on reducing the contribution, the supplementation to the fund, sir.
Well, there's only 18 seconds left. So that concludes the period for questions without notice. Proposed members content to adjourn now? The Assembly is adjourned until 2:15.